I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
We are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
And we are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance, and you're watching the NWCA podcast, the only wrestling history podcast out there that doesn't just talk wrestling history, we show history. Wes, we got a pretty big deal coming up here.
Showing the wrestling history all over the place, man. We got a big deal. You know what? This is awesome for us to start introducing some guests, and one of our friends who I've known for like 6 or 7 years, a couple of decades, quite a long time. We went to a show in Buffalo like 1,000 years ago, and he's been a great guy, and I've actually seen him work, not wrestle, but work as a referee. Eddington, the awesome old school Jim Connelly.
Hey,
Jim,
where'd the
welcome to the show, buddy.
Come on now. I'm old school Eddington James. 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
No, I'm
one,
a Superfan
two.
Jim now. Yeah, 1, 2, only 2.
So Jim, we're gonna do beers with the boys today. I've got my glass.
Oh my goodness.
I've got my first one. Awesome.
We'll pretend that this is my first one.
I just
It's
finished.
called acting.
I am on the water diet.
I just got home like 45 minutes ago. So
Wes, I just look at your head and I just want you to get the Bam Bam Bigelow tattoo.
oh God.
Can you the Bam Bam?
You're making fun of me because I got a bit of a tan. Jim's a little on the white side.
I still got the flowing locks.
Yeah. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers out to Winter Pig.
Yes, Winter Peg.
Miller High Life.
There you go. I'm doing the PBR thing.
Well, we've been talking about having you on the show for a while, and now that you're here, Ontario referee, huge super fan. We did the Schwab Wars episode together.
Yeah,
As soon as we did that, we knew we just had to have you out with us. So
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
of course,
I have the odd story.
the odd story. I heard about let's start right off the gate. You brought up a story with Wes, and he really. So can we talk about the shoelace story?
Shoelace.
It was nothing. It was just
Obviously, it made an impression on me.
I drove because I knew where we were going, and it was a I don't know, 1982 K car or something with the transmission gear shift was held onto the transmission with a shoelace.
That's right. I remember that now.
Oh my God!
I remember we had a little trouble there in Buffalo.
Who'd you guys see that night?
Oh, it was a great
I
car.
actually went back and I think either Wes sent me or I sent him the card. We found the card that it was. I think Greg Oliver helped on that too.
Yes, he did.
And I had said it was a Terry Funk, Ric Flair, I Quit match, and I was correct.
Yep.
So that's what I remember. The Midnight Express is the only time I ever got to see them live. See, for people in the Toronto area, we always we loved NWA and WCW and all that. But the NWA after '84, we really never saw very much of. Like, we had that couple of Mosca shows in Hamilton, a couple of shows at the CNE exhibition, but generally we didn't. So that was, I used to love the NWA. So we ended up going to Buffalo to see that, and which is no mean feat because none of us lived anywhere close together. So it was an interesting drive.
So I think you drove to my house.
Yep.
And then I don't know if Greg was driving by then or not. He was probably still 14.
I'm wondering if I drove him to your place and maybe or something like that. I was trying to think about it. I'm not sure.
That was a long time ago. That was about.
It reminded me of that too, because I never really realized. Like, Greg Oliver's always been and for those who don't know, he was wrote a newsletter back in the 90s, I guess it was, or 80s, and I didn't realize he was so young. We went over to we met each other at a show, and I'd been writing for stuff, and he had knew my name, and I knew his name, so I finally introduced myself. And we became friends, and we went down to Chicago for a Wrestling Fans International convention with all 18 people who showed up. And the weekend we had, they had booked Nick Bockwinkel, so we had him for the weekend.
Wow.
All themselves. We just sat and asked him questions the entire weekend. We were supposed to go to a certain show, but they ended up sending us to a different show, Windy City Wrestling, which was pretty cool. So we got to see, you know, the original Steve Regal, not the one from England, and a few guys. I really don't remember the card too well. I should have brought. I have an actual headband from there, but it was a fun show. I remember there was a big, large man standing outside. For whoever I went with, like we went to this thing. There's 18 fans. And from there, we went to the show. Like, I didn't know anybody, but somebody said, hey, jump in a car. So whoever it was had this gold Camaro or something like that.
Okay.
Didn't stand out at all in, did I mention it was Chicago?
Yeah.
And we're on probably not the right side of Chicago. And I remember this large man, maybe 280, 300, nothing to do with the show, just met us outside the car in the show. And he said, that'll be $20. And he was not a parking attendant and had nothing to do official. He was just saying, pay me $20 and we won't wreck your car.
Okay.
So we paid $20 and our car was there when we got out. So we were pretty happy. So, but it was an interesting trip. But Greg reminded me lately, he says, you realize I was 17 at the time when you took me over to the border. And I was like, no. So we took the train to wherever it was, Chicago, and it was a fun trip. I remember meeting a couple of people who I still keep in touch with. Wade Keller was one of them, if you know the Torch, and and we became friendly and haven't seen him for a long time. A guy named Harry White, who was a really big historian guy at the time. So it was just a good trip. So those are the kind of things I did as a fan. I've done a few, I showed, Jesse the picture of Lou Thez and Buddy Rogers. That was John Arezzi, if you've heard his name. He's a historian, kind of a promoter guy in New York City. It was called Weekend of Champions, and everybody was there from Moolah to Flair, who was in between WCW and WWE at the time.
Wow.
And, so he was available, and they had Bruno and just a whole bunch of Superstar Billy Graham and just a bunch of people. So yeah, it was one of those things that, I dragged the family to that, and they still haven't forgiven me, but that's another story.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to meet all these cool people, man. Like,
yeah, it's really cool.
That's pretty awesome. Did you talk with Superstar Billy Graham at all?
You know what? And I always say to fans, because, I'm in the business. I did indie wrestling. I'm not really any big deal. I did a couple of thousand matches for indie wrestling. But as a fan, I always try to tell people, try to find something that no one else is going to know.
Yeah.
So when I went to Lou Thez, he had just retired. And I am darned, because you caught me on the spot here, I cannot remember who he wrestled on his last match. But whoever it was in Japan, and I knew about it. And I said, oh, I saw your match. Now, remember, this is pre-internet and everything. So it was like, I did get a tape and saw your match with, fill in the blank, I cannot remember his name. And Lou Thez all of a sudden puts his arm around me, yells down to Buddy Rogers, this guy knows stuff.
Okay.
Yells
there you
down
go.
to Graham. You remember, Thez and Rogers were no big friends, but they were sitting beside each other shooting. They were having, when you're sitting together, you sit with the people you know of, right? So, I mean, these young kids like Superstar Billy Graham, and Bruno, they were still kids to them, so they didn't sit with those guys. But it was just an interesting thing. With Ric Flair, I happened to, maybe a name that's come up on the show, I don't know, Eleazar Lenga, who was a baseball player on my team that I coached. And I got him into wrestling because I brought him over to my house. Another one of those kids.
Really?
However, I was about 19 and he was about 14 when I was coaching. So I brought him to my place because I was on the way home, and I just showed him some newsletters. Now, at that time, it was Ronald DeBrotz out of Chicago. He did a local newsletter. Yeah. And don't think Meltzer was around quite yet. And Elio took that in and loved it, and he came down to Maple Leaf Gardens with me a couple of times, and I met another friend of mine from the neighborhood, Eddie Smith, and the three of us would go to shows in Oshawa and things like that. Well, Eddie Smith ended up being Turbo Ned Tyson in Ontario wrestling, and Elio became second hand to Mr. Tunney, And
Stranglehold magazine.
I became an Indy ref. So I mean, the three of us ended up getting in the business. So that was one of those things. But I've lost what I was talking about. This is what happens when you get old.
No, that's all right. Do you think Ilio Zerlango will ever talk to anybody? Because he doesn't want to talk, and I don't blame him for not wanting to talk to anybody.
I haven't talked to him for a long time, but he doesn't like the business the way it is now. I don't think I'm saying anything out of school. He, like you, likes the old stuff, and he used to say to me when we used to go down to the AWF shows. Wes will remember that Terry and me used to come down to the shows, and we would go watch these AWF shows with Ronnie Hutchison. And Ilya would come down once in a while and sit with us, and because he still liked wrestling. But he said wrestlers had to be big. He said if they're not larger than life, what are you doing? So when I started reffing, I was reffing with Ronnie Hutchison, and my first match was Kazarni, Sim versus Vijay Singh. But those guys were 230, 240. And as I left the business, 230 pounds was a huge guy.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest changes I've noticed. Good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not making any,
we all, everyone likes
he does have, I'm not going to tell too much because I don't know how many people know this, but he does still have a connection to wrestling, and that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say in Ontario, he does have a connection to wrestling, and I won't say anything more because I don't know how private that is or secret it is. But he still is interesting. He still has his eye on the biz, and it does. Like I'm in August 20th, I'm retiring as a referee. I'm managing in Barrie. Am I going to retire August 20th? Well,
Yeah.
You can't you just can't do it. I mean, I haven't
ever watched this show.
We haven't talked to each other for 40 years, and then it was like we hadn't missed a beat.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going? I was like, we just didn't miss a beat. Like we do, as if we had seen each other the night before. So
I used to go to shows with Tim Gerard, and his big thing talking about after the fact when he got out of the business was it's supposed to be professional heavyweight wrestling, and that's not taking anything away from the guys that are doing it now. But we went to shows, PWF in Kitchener, and while we were reffing, so know guys. And some of those guys were smaller than you, Jim.
Well, the whole idea is it's a circus, and you got to have a little bit of everything. You have your horses, you have your clowns, you have your. So in wrestling, there's nothing wrong with a lightweight, wrestling match. There's nothing wrong with a heavyweight whatever, and the giants, and not being politically correct, I'll say midgets, but that's what they were called, and that's what they call themselves. Lady wrestlers, you have a little bit of tag team, you have a little bit of everything. But a lot of the independent cards now, and it's not just Ontario, it's everywhere, are all guys under 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And as Wes said, I mean, one of the criteria for being a ref is being small. And I towered over so many of the wrestlers, unfortunately, and I'm only 195 or so. 200, 180. Depends how much of this PBR I drink. But I mean, that was a big negative for me because I'm a big boy, and that's why it's nice to see guys like Josh Alexander and some of these guys who are actually put on some weight and look like champions. And some of them don't look big, like Cody Deaner, for instance, in Ontario, the old Cody Steele. He is a lot bigger than you think, and it's all muscle. There's nothing extra on him. So the guys who are actually making it in the business, they are the big boys. It's not the little guys. I mean, even guy, if you go watch AEW, Sonny Kiss is a friend of mine, and he's huge. Like he's got muscles on muscles, and he's a big boy. So larger than life, as Ilya used to say, that was his thing.
It just kills me when you guys say, "Oh, there used to be big." Wasn't the Sheik like 4'11"? Like the guy was tiny.
No, he was not in my memory. He threw a garbage can at me in Aurora. I'd say he was 230.
He threw a garbage can at you?
Oh yeah, well, it was mostly at my wife, but that's another story. She'll tell you that story.
Must be love. 5'5".
What were you taking your wife to a wrestling show for?
Well, it was early in our relationship.
She
plays hockey in her 60s. She still plays hockey. She does her hockey. I do my wrestling. They're totally separate, and that's the way it worked out. And it's this is our 41st year, so I guess it must have worked. So you have to have your own thing.
Yes.
She has her own.
This is just great for me. In the last like month, I've now heard the Sheik broke Terry Dart's camera, and now the Sheik throws a garbage can at you.
Yep, just a really nice guy.
And then Wes runs away from the Sheik after asking for a photo.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's when, you know, and you're going to hear this argument over and over again, even within the dressing room, about what a heel is. And I know the old time, I get to chat with you for some reason, I don't know what it is, but anybody who's semi-old in the dressing room automatically comes and sits with me, like Homicide, those kind of guys. They'll sit with me and talk about their families and stuff, but they've been around, they've seen it all. And the idea of a heel, you don't, you know, Wes, I see at handfuls of indie shows, you don't sell merch.
Yeah.
And now heels sit out there at the table after, you know, a gruesome match and sell merch. And I don't understand it. Heels were heels. Now, some people, you know, as I say, the old timers tend to come up and talk to me. And, you know, Ronnie Hutchison's a friend of mine. He did a lot of wrestling on the East Coast as the Masked Thunderbolt. Oops,
Yep.
kayfabe. I think that's pretty out in the open. But he was telling me that, you know, and Bobby Bass, of course, is another friend of mine. He was saying that in the old days, what they would do is they'd have the merch table, and the good guys would share the money with some of the heels. You know, if you're working a program with somebody, you might share some of the money. You wouldn't. There wasn't Sheik merchandise.
Exactly.
There wasn't any merchandise back in the day, but there was very little merchandise. I have a Dewey Robertson 8x10, and I look back now and don't know how I got it, because I don't remember them selling merchandise back in the day, but they did, and a little bit, but not the heels, none of them. So
Yeah.
it's just a different time. It's not wrong. It's not bad. I love the guys now. I get along with all of them, but I think I do anyways. But it's a different time, and it's an evolution, and some people would say a de-evolution, or whatever the word would be, that it's gone downhill. But I mean, you're still packing the place. The pay-per-views are still doing well, and you know, you watch the AEW stuff, and they're drawing very well. And so I mean, it's just different. It's just different.
No, it is completely, and I can say that because of the generation of fandom that I grew up in. And I always say this to Wes all the time. And I always tell Wes, like, hey man, like, check this guy out. Oh, he's small. I'm like, yeah, but look at the athleticism.
Yeah.
Look at how he jumps off the ropes and does the flips and
And
we always try. It's a show. It's a
show. And if they're using psychology, and what I like seeing is when I see a young guy in the dressing room listening to an older guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it, and I don't mean to embarrass him, but I remember one show I was at, and I was in, I can't remember, Coburg or someplace, but Bobby Bass came in and, you know, grabbed a piece of pizza, you know, as he's wont to do, like Ricky Johnson, and people didn't get it. Like, I'm going, you realize that Ricky and Bobby, especially Bobby, worked Maple Leaf Gardens in front of 18,000 people.
Yeah.
You're pretty excited that you're working in front of 200. Listen to the guy.
Big difference.
Listen to the guy. And they see, you know, old people as old people. I had one of the young wrestlers a few years ago who's moved out to BC since. And I said to him one time, do we have a problem? Because he just wasn't very friendly with me. And he says, well, I don't like old people. That was his answer. And I kept thinking, wow, that's a blanket statement. And, you know, I like the guy, like I say, I like the guys who, you know, chat with the, you know, will listen and learn and go to seminars and get better and better and better and listen, and don't, you know, the cliche about I have to get all my spots in. That's such a cliche.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Like, it is absolutely true. I've worked with so many guys who, you know, I have to get my spot. I have to get this one, and I want to do this. I've got to do this. And I'm just going, I just shake my head going, you've got to get emotion. And I think, I don't give a lot of advice in the ring. I really, really don't, because I just think I'm a glorified fan. But once in a while, I'll whisper to them and say, listen to the fans.
Yeah.
Listen to the fans. That's who's, you know, just listen to them. And if they're, you know, you're doing all these great spots and they're not responding, then, you know, throw an arm bar on, hold it, and, you know, see what, you know, work it for a minute. Work a body part.
See what's happening. Actually stop your spots and do something so that both of you can get down in a position to confer to a certain extent to let's make this better. And we've talked about, Jesse and I talked about the match, the first Moscow match between Flair and Dusty.
That's
Yep.
right.
Classic example, right?
Yep.
If it was, and no offense against anyone, but if it was two of the guys from PWF, and I'm just using them as an example.
PWA, by the way, now it's called
PWA, yeah.
5, and I still work for them.
Eric Carney and someone else. Okay, but his name comes up because he works me bad. I hate him, but he does his job good. And so yeah, if these guys could see that,
Moscomania.
right? Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't think I went to that one. I went to the second one, but go ahead.
This says draws 12,000 to the Coliseum.
Yep.
Midgets provide the Moscomania thrills. So
And
there
then-
you go.
Tunney did everything he could to get rid of that show, I'll tell you.
Yep.
Really?
By the time the second one came around, he would destroy shows. I remember when Cannon tried to promote, and that's when I got to see, the only time I ever got to see Luthez live was in front of 100 people. And I was joking with George Cannon, never met him in my life before, but it was easy to chat with him since there was 100 people
Yeah.
to see Luthez in Toronto, because Tunney throws on a show, brings in his champions and everything just to stop him. I know with Tunney it was something with the licensing at the time, the Ontario License Athletic Board that he did with Mosca. But agreeing with Wes totally, I'll tell you how professional it was back then. This, I believe, was the second Moscomania show where I, as a totally 30, 40-year-old adult, sobbed because we didn't get to see Dusty very often.
Yeah.
So I go to Hamilton. Now, Hamilton, even now with the little indie shows, very smart crowd. Very smart, really with it. The old term smarks. They were smart marks. They really were. And the match was Dusty versus Tully Blanchard when Tully Blanchard and him had a program going on. Tully, was an amazing worker. I used to think he was small.
I have the card here too, actually. I just
really?
found this.
Yep.
What happened was, so I am so excited. I think I've told Wes this story before. And they lock up and whatever, and the fans booed Dusty.
Whoa.
He was at his peak as popularity, but the smart fans cheered Tully. So even before the famous Hulk Hogan Rock match at Skydome, which I was there, where they did exactly the same thing, but this was years before. You see Dusty and him lock up, and you just see them talking for a second. So out of the clinch, they come out. All of a sudden, Tully does a flip-flop and fly on Dusty, does the spinning hands and does the big bionic elbow to Dusty. The fans went insane.
I bet.
That's crazy.
But there you go. There's two guys. Dusty, has an ego like everybody else, but what's best for the business?
Yeah.
For the show.
That moment to say, hey, the fans don't like me. Okay, I used to be one of the outsiders or whatever with Dick Murdoch. I can go out there, not the outsiders, can't remember what they're called, the outlaws. I was one of the outlaws. I know how to heel, and he did, and it was amazing. And so I'm sobbing because I'm not sobbing, but I was crying because I was just 40-year-old man because I'm going. I wanted to see Dusty do the whole thing and the elbow and the whole thing. But as a professional, I just looked at him and just said, I like him better now because he's, what's best for business. I'm not going to feed my ego and try to go over when obviously these fans have decided that they're going to have fun tonight and, be smart, smart Alex and cheer for the bad guys. So, but I mean, just to say that, that kind of professionalism, I'm not sure we see that so much anymore. And, just going back, where I started was, get my spots in, and even on the TV shows, you see it. I mean, I listen to Busted Open quite a bit, and you see from the pro wrestling point of view that they agree with me in that a lot of people need to start putting the show ahead of themselves and their egos, and it's a show, like you said, it's a show, it's an entertaining show. I always used to defend it. I said it's the best entertainment for your dollar. I mean, you're going to see everything. If your favorite doesn't win, well, there's 3 more matches where somebody's going to win that you like, and you're going to get excited. And I used to tell the levels. I always brought friends in high school that weren't wrestling fans because nobody was. Because this is pre-84. I started going to the Gardens around 1970, and I'd been to one other card, maybe 68, but 1970s, you'd go there. My friends would, this was the progression. They'd be going, they'd whisper to me because they knew I was excited, and they'd say, well, it's not really that real. It's pretty fake. But the next step was my favorite, because then they'd nudge you. Well, doesn't the referee see that?
Yeah.
Get what I mean?
Yeah.
They suddenly got hooked. They didn't mean to get hooked.
Yeah.
But the minute they said that, they've left their logic behind and just had some fun with it. And you get into it, and you fall for the story, just like a good play or a good movie. And that's what it's all about. So there you go.
So you started to go to the Gardens to see shows in the 70s, or
1970, 71, something like that. Yeah, around there. Yeah.
So the pretty much the Chic era.
The Chic era for sure. And as I say, you might have 5 people in the whole place would cheer for them, and they were being jerks. But I'm saying 5, and it generally, except in the summer, it was 16,000 people every show. In the summer, it would drop to about 7,000 because Mr. Ballard would turn off the air conditioning so that you would buy drinks.
Yeah.
That's
a true
hilarious.
story. So people would go to their cottages and stuff, and the attendance would go about half. But with a little saran wrap over the cup, and I can still remember. I can remember it totally. So much fun. Maple Leaf Gardens back then, not the ACC or any of those ones. They're real Maple Leaf Gardens. So.
The Gardens was an awesome place to see anything, but
Yeah.
mostly I treasure my hockey, watching the NHL there when I was a kid, and then going to wrestling in my later years because I was a closet fan, so I never went.
Yeah, and I was in high school when I went. And I was just brave all of a sudden to go, and I had 1 or 2 friends who were wrestling fans, but not very many. And I was at a school, I was at Earl Haig in Toronto, 2,000 people there, and I might find 2, 3 people who liked wrestling maybe, because it wasn't cool then.
No.
They threw better. There wasn't any pay-per-views, lots of television. So, instead of watching, WWE programming 6 hours a week or 8 hours, whatever you do now, and then AEW got 6 hours, you'd have, 1 or 2 WWF shows, 1 or 2 NWA shows, NWF, Grand Prix from Montreal, Stampede, All Star from Vancouver. You were watching 7 hours a weekend, and all different.
Yeah, we were blessed with.
We were blessed. Like you'd see, Tommy R would be a jobber in Toronto. Then you'd watch him on NWF in Buffalo, and he was Tommy Reisman, and he'd win once in a while. It was just like your mind was blown. You couldn't figure this out. Because there was no internet to explain anything, so you really couldn't figure it out. But it was so much fun.
Jim, do you want to see classic wrestling on the Fight Network? There's a show called Classic All-Star Wrestling.
I can't afford the Fight Network.
Oh, well, it's on the Fight Network, and it shows, I record it all the time.
Guys.
I don't have cable, so.
Yeah, but you're a businessman and you're cheap.
Yeah. And I'm a teacher, and that just goes without saying that we're cheap. We always have, ask every waitress in every bar. They'll tell you teachers are the cheapest. So
that's next to Canada Post.
Yeah. I do have the WWE Network, which I never watch, but I share it with my son, so he watches it. So that's good. He buys my Netflix. It all works out.
Yeah.
I want to talk I want to bring it back a bit. You said it's like a circus. You have to have certain characters. Now, when I read the book Drawing Heat, I'm sure you've read that book.
Autographed copy.
Yeah. And when I was recommended it, I couldn't find it. And then that's when I met Greg Oliver and then got Terry Dart's stuff and the book. And that's how I started my journey. But that book, he's like, he kept.
Well, it's good because Terry Dart was very organized with his materials.
Oh, yeah. So I've been told thousands of times. So pretty much like when I show you everything, like this is all his stuff. And I just put it all together pretty much.
Well, if you put it in a binder, it's way better than the boxes he had. Greg Oliver used to come back just shaking his head and say, I can't believe it.
Plastic bags. Remember, Terry always had a plastic bag with him.
Yep.
Yeah. And now I bring my binders to shows. So
that's one of my
really good.
regrets is that, you know, we had super fans. I mean, Terry Dart, I try to explain to the wrestlers today, you know, there's a lot of super fans now that do a lot of cool things. But Terry Dart was I've never seen anybody like him. And my biggest regret is not meeting him way earlier in my life, because I really met him in the 90s. I had probably talked to him through, you know, newsletters and things like that. I was writing for Greg Oliver. I was writing for the guy in Winnipeg who's Terry Matchlock.
Yeah.
Who I actually have met several times now at Cauliflower Alley. My, you know, cheap plug here on my shirt, which is coming up in September, which I'm not going to because I'm not really comfortable traveling quite yet. But here's my cheap advertisement for absolutely no profit. If you are an old time fan in the States, wherever you're living right now, if you haven't been to Cauliflower Alley, you're missing out. Go to their website. I don't know what it is, but it's Cauliflower Alley. Just Google it. And I know some of the award winners this year. Bradshaw is going to be one. Our own East Coast Madison Miles is going to be one.
Yes.
Jerry the King.
Jesse the King Lawler, that's right. And I believe
Jerry, not Jesse the King.
And I believe
I mean, I do appreciate the plug.
I mean, no, I don't know. I have a lot of fun going down to there. You meet some guys, and the best night I ever had in my life was the first time I went down there, because Winnipeg's own there, Mr. Wes, Freddie. I met Freddie, and Ronnie introduced me, and another worker from Calgary, Bob Wayne, and Freddie Peliquin and myself became very close friends. And Freddie Peliquin wrestled as Puppy Dog Peliquin, a Mad Dog Vachon clone,
miniature.
Yes. And I said to him, so these are the workers back in the day, and if you're a fan, you might call them jobbers. It's more polite to call them enhancement workers, I think. But they have great stories. Well, Freddie just looks at me, Puppy Dog Peliquin, and I just said to him, "Did you ever work, Hulk Hogan?" "Well, Jim, I'll order the first picture." So he ordered the first picture, and I went to bed at 4:30 that night. We started about 10, and he just told me story after story after story after story. And he was an enhancement worker, but you don't realize that those guys
work all the stars.
They knew stuff.
Yeah.
He led Hulk Hogan through the match because he said it was a handicap match, and he said the two of them had to lead him through the matches. Now this is when he was with the AWA, which was a Winnipeg stronghold, and before he'd become famous, but he didn't know anything, and these guys had to lead him through. Then I just start throwing names at Bob Wayne, and if you work with him, yeah, I work with him, yeah, no, this guy, oh, he's smooth as silk. This guy, oh, no. So it was just, if you love that kind of stuff, you got to go to Cauliflower Alley. You really do. And you'll meet Greg Oliver. Probably he comes down most times. And I'm trying to get Wes to come. And, I just think, for me, if you're an old time fan, you might bump into, I've had beers with, Pat Patterson and, Gene Okerlund.
Oh, wow.
I'm sitting down at a table with them.
Nice.
And every time, and I hate when they've passed away, but Pat Patterson would pick somebody, because I drank with him twice, and somebody in the night he would pick on for the night, and he would call them Mark.
Oh,
Inside joke there.
Yeah.
And I was Mark one night, and a very big name in maritime wrestling right now, David Boyce. He sort of promotes and announces and does a whole bunch of stuff. He was one night, and Pat Patterson was one of the funniest guys I've met. He was just funny funny as insulting me to death and making me feel bad, but it was funny. So,
yeah.
And you get once in a while, like I think I've told before, Jesse mentioned it. You get that period when you started watching wrestling, and that's the most magical time. You will always go back to that. I've watched wrestling for over 50 years, and I still go back to those early days, that first autograph, that first, so the time that I went to Cauliflower Alley and the guys from All Star Wrestling in Vancouver were there. Well, I couldn't stop the tears. I'm sitting at a table with Moondog Moretti. That means nothing to anybody. But to me, I'm wiping the tears away. And we did a practical joke on him. It was just craziness. And I'm sitting with him and, some of these guys that I'd read about and watched on TV. And it was just cool. Vern Siebert is now a friend of mine. He was a referee back in the day and a wrestler. And Kevin Jeffries, who was a referee, actually, he made it up to the WWF. But he was also a worker in Vancouver that I remember, and he's become a good friend of mine. And so, as I say, I mean, you don't have to be a worker to go and find out all the, the details. And B. Brian Blair's the president, and you might remember from Killer B thing.
Yeah.
So, it's just a fun time. So meet some new friends, talk wrestling for a whole week. It's pretty awesome.
I bet. I have to admit, I costed it one year when I was chatting to you a few years ago, and it's like, oh, I guess I could afford it if I really want to, but
it's true. I mean, this year I'm doing the old I can't afford it, but I could. It's more the safety and the COVID thing right now. Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit nervous about it still, and I know I shouldn't be, but I'm not young anymore, so you start thinking about stuff like that, and
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, so I'm not sure I'm going to go this year, but I do recommend it to everybody if you're an old-time fan, American, Canadian, wherever you're from. They come from all over. They really do. So, yeah.
Did you ever go to a Wild Man show? Like, obviously, I saw the posters.
Many.
Did you ever wrestle the bear?
Well, I think I actually had to write Wes and correct him because he had a picture of the new Barry Molson Center as one of the places that Wildman would have, and he definitely didn't work there. It was the old Dunlop Arena, which is not there anymore. I'm just looking here to see if I have a poster from it. I don't think I do right here. But yeah, I know. I know. So that I used to see the Wildman shows, and then after that, it morphed into Duncan McTavish, who an all-star wrestling from Vancouver. He started running shows too, right around that, just after the Wildman times, probably in the early '90s or late '80s. So I went to a lot of those shows and met a lot of the wrestlers, and it was pretty cool. Meet Archie Goldie, and who was in the same league as the Sheik as a heel.
Definitely, yeah.
Like you just
really.
I remember watching it with my mom. Not that she was watching; it was more that I was watching it. She was in the room at the time, and she actually physically cried because she thought he just kept stomping on Stu Hart's hand, and she just thought it was real. Yeah. And you just, would she watch wrestling now and cry because she thought it was, that real? And that was, I don't know. Maybe MJF has got it for sure.
Oh my God, that guy.
Yeah.
Wes, you don't probably know who MJF is, but this guy is.
Jesse, I reffed him twice. Just thought I'd tell you.
Oh, thanks. But Greek Town for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because speaking of before we get MJF is a huge heel, but one of my favorite indie matches is actually you reffed as Jacques Sampson versus Little Guido at Greektown Wrestling. That's when you guys cheers the beer, you smash your head with a thing. Jim smashes his head with a beer can.
At the beginning of the show, hey, as Guido's coming out, he says, "Do you remember the Sandman?" I said, "Yeah." "Can you do a Sandman with the beer?" I said, "I think so." And that was the entire conversation we had.
Yeah.
And remember, the finish was he grabbed my hand and we did a double elbow on Jock. Poor Jock.
Yeah.
Jock is if you haven't seen Jock Sampson, he's out of Cleveland, and he is old school to the nth degree. And he had, and talk about a selfless wrestler. Number one, he's big. He does the cowboy thing.
One of the nicest guys. Like I've talked to him.
He won't say that. He's a horrible man. That's the one bad thing. He is pretty funny. He is a pretty funny guy.
Yeah.
Great. But he's funny. He does great promos. And he was 0, and they actually kept track of it, something like 0 and 100.
Okay.
Point where in intermission at one time, I can't remember the match except he was knocked cold. So at intermission, you were allowed to get your picture taken pinning him. And every time a fan would pin him, they would add that to his loss record.
Oh.
And if Jesse knows, I mean, I don't know how many years, 3 or 4 years, he never.
He beat
RJ
City.
Yeah, he was the most over wrestler on the show.
Yeah.
Ever won a match. Does that tell you something? There's a reason I know Bobby Bass, enhancement worker, never won a match that I ever saw. Rip Rogers, one of the most famous trainers nowadays, I never saw him win a match. So these guys had the knowledge. They were really good guys. They're really good. And as I say, Josh Sampson, if you haven't seen him, he really has it. Whether he'll go on to, I asked him one time, I said, why hasn't the NWA, like Billy Corrigan's NWA, picked you up? Because you just would fit in like a glove.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and said, I know, eh? Like he didn't say A because he's American, but he I know, huh?
Yes.
But he didn't understand it either. He says, I thought the same thing. He says, I would fit like a glove. And I guess they had a couple of guys. He's a big boy too. So, I mean, but I love working with him. He's one of my favorite guys to work with. I really like working with him. He's just a super nice guy. But yeah, a throwback to the old school stuff, which I love. So
That's
yeah.
Wes's territory.
I also love the match he had at Greektown with another old school guy, with Shane Douglas.
I was there, front row, baby.
Well, I'm going to tell you the story about that. And I don't know how much kayfabe you get into on this show. I haven't, you know.
We have absolutely no problems with.
Okay, I'm just saying. Shane came in late.
Yeah.
He looked at, and I don't know. You know that. I don't want to tell you too much. I mean, I want a little bit of.
As a fan, I waited outside, and we were told Shane Douglas is not going to be at the VIP meet and greet. He will do his signing and will take up all things for you at the halftime. And I went up. He said, "Sorry for being late." I shook his hand, took my pictures, got my belt signed, walked away.
I'm glad because he honestly got there, looked at Jock, and said, "Well, we're going to play it by ear."
Okay.
And hear about how, you know, meticulous Randy Savage would plan matches. And, you know, the guys now, it's like spot after spot after spot. I mean, there is some planning involved. As a referee, I really don't know much about it all. That's the truth, because I can't remember. I don't remember. I didn't remember anything. So them telling me they're mad, it wouldn't mean anything to me. But they called it in the ring.
Okay.
Wow.
Just like they used to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know. You were there, Jesse. How was the match? It was pretty good.
I loved it.
Yeah,
I knew Jacques was going to lose because I always go to Greektown. He never won.
No, he never won.
He always
did win
would face
eventually.
the big attraction.
He did win
in,
eventually
right?
a match, but
yeah. So like Guido come in or Douglas would come in, and I think did he do Whipwreck too? I can't remember if he did
Whipwreck was on the show. I don't know if he did him. I can't remember, but
he wrestled Stone Rockwell, I think that.
Yeah, Stone Rockwell. Yep, I did one of those matches, the Christmas tree.
Yeah, the Christmas match. That's right. That was just, I think, shortly after the Detroit Eatery burned down.
Yes, that was a sad thing, but yeah, I mean, as the promoter did like me and Jock Sampson, because Jock Sampson does comedy matches, right? And they used to say, "We love you doing comedy matches." So, but the thing is, to do a comedy match, you have to be good. I worked Colt Cabana once, who would be the modern day comedy match guy, the most serious human I've ever worked with. His comedy was so, it's like if you talk, you know, stand-up comedians, they're the most serious people you'll ever meet. So, I mean, it's a business. Yes. So to do comedy, it's got to be planned, and you got to do it right, or it's not funny. Or, you know, the timing. Blue Meanie was another one, a very serious guy. Also, he was in the room next to me at Cauliflower Alley. Just to throw that in again, telling people if you go to I have no profit in this, no reason for me to want to go. I'm just saying, if you're an old-time fan, you got to do it.
Sounds like a lot. Yeah.
Live. I mean, I don't know. Do you know how disappointed I was? You know, my hero obviously was Dusty Rhodes. He was going to be at one of the Cauliflower Alleys, and he passed away with 4 or 5 days after we didn't know he was sick. That's why he couldn't make it. And I was mad because he was sick. And then I felt bad because he passed away. I didn't realize he was that sick, but I was so disappointed to meet him. So I'm just saying, it's a horrible thing to say, but if you want to see the old timers, you got to go now, because they may not be there next time. You know, as I understand, the Rock and Roll Express are going to be there. Great, because they might not be there the next time. Who was I having beers with? Oh, Gene Okerlund and Pat Patterson. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. You know.
Speaking of old timers and people coming off, what are your thoughts on Ric Flair going back in the ring at 78 years old? I told Wes. Wes didn't believe me. I had to send him the article and the videos of him training with Jay Lethal.
Well, as I understand it, and I may have this wrong, it's going to be a 3-man tag.
Yeah, 6 man. So
we're not sure who the
FTR,
are
Rock
yet.
and Roll Express, Flair, and then Ricky Steamboat denied. But apparently, according to Jim Cornette, he had something happen to him in the 90s that just kind of ended his career shortly.
Yeah, he did have I've worked with
a health issue. Yeah.
Yeah, he won't do anything more than the chop in the ring now because
issues.
Remember, he was actually doing a run in WWE, if you remember it, as an older gentleman. And because I love when I see older guys wrestle. I remember when, and I'm gonna get this wrong, but I want to say the Stampede in WCW or NWA. They used to bring back old wrestlers. I remember Nick Bockwinkel wrestled Dory Funk Jr. and it was slow, but great.
Yes.
I popped over everything, and I was just going, "This is awesome." So they used to bring back 2 old guys every time, and it was great. I loved it. So if Ric Flair could do one more match, I don't really have a hard time about it. I mean, I'm 67, and the only reason I'm retiring is because gas prices, and I might not have the passion anymore. The 2-year layoff at COVID I really enjoyed my time at home. I really did. So I think that I sort of, when you're immersed in it, you don't want to leave it because it's just like, that's what you do. Oh, every weekend you're going to wrestling. I was reffing, 6 times a month, if not more. As I say, I ref 2,000 matches. Well, my first 5 years, I probably wrestled 200, ref 200. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying a lot of those in the last few years. Yeah. And it was every weekend. And I'm enjoying staying home. I really am. So, because the last one we did was PWA, and it ended up being an ice storm, and it was just awful. And the gas prices now, to be honest, I mean, I don't think it's a big secret to tell you the refs are paid the lowest on the card. No. And unless you're in Ontario, unless you're Jimmy Corderas, Harry D, or perhaps one of the better younger guys like Cody Ireland or I can't think of his name, Brad Meyer. Those guys might get paid a little bit more, but generally, I remember talking to Asylum not that long ago, telling him that I make the same money that Ron Hutchison paid me in 2000. Mm. Actually, less at some shows. So that was a lot of money. So it wouldn't even cover my gas. Wouldn't even cover my gas now. So,
that the other man for Flair is actually rumored right now to be Hogan or Sting.
I had heard that Hogan was out as well.
Oh, really?
I haven't heard Sting. I haven't heard Sting. So
yeah, it's just because he wrestles now, so it would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, as much as Flair is great, they're gonna have to help him a lot. But I mean, I do like it. I mean, glad it's not a singles match.
Yes, definitely.
And if he, you would think that he's going to get the win.
Yes.
And if he throws a chop, if he throws one chop that connects, the pop is going to be, it's going to be tears down your face, because he's maybe the most passionate wrestler I've ever seen. I have total respect for Ric Flair. I was on a show recently with 2 eggheads, and we were discussing who the best wrestler of all time and of NWA. And I said it was Ric Flair against these old guys who thought Lou Thez was great. I'm sorry, it was you guys. But I thought Flair I remember I used to look at him in Japan when you'd see him, and he was so serious before, and you'd see him blowing out of his, and he was just so pumped. And it's a performance, and he is in there, and he is planning his head. He takes it so seriously.
Yes.
So all the outside stuff he did outside the ring and everything else, that was showbiz. But in the ring, there's nobody who took it more seriously than him. And as I say, I have total respect for him. So, I mean, for him to do one more match, I understand it. We all wished he would have ended a long time ago. The Shawn Michaels thing was good, the way they ended it.
That was a beautiful match.
Not a big Shawn Michaels fan, but I'll give him that.
Oh, well, what a coincidence. Neither is Wes.
Well, we remember him from the beginning, and,
I liked him in the AWA. I loved him in the AWA.
Yeah. But he'll always be that guy with the frills and the Marty Jannetty, and I can't even think of what their names were because I'm old.
Midnight Rockers,
yeah. And I never bought him as a big, like I said, I like big guys. He was slim, and it was like Jake the Snake Roberts. Never bought into him because he was tall and slim. Worked with him several times. Nicest guy ever. But bought me a meal one time, but just never bought those guys because they were small. And I there's part of me that is Elio, where guys have to be 230, 240 to even, and those would be the lower end of the weight scale.
Jim, I'll talking about that, one guy I didn't get was Rick Rude.
Same for the same reason too.
He looked like if you punched him. I mean, yes, he was all muscular and everything, but if you punched him in the stomach, you'd really hurt him.
Yeah, and I think the thing with him is if you met, I don't think I ever met him, but I did see him live a few times. He was very tall,
Yes,
like Jake the Snake, and I think that they are bigger. As I say, I hit around right now I'm about 185, 180, somewhere in that vicinity, but I've been up to 200 pounds, and these guys would dwarf me, and I'd go, oh, okay, it was just the television that made them look small, or it's all relative to the people. You're watching Jake the Snake on Mid-Atlantic Wrestling or something. You gotta remember, everybody was big.
or he's wrestling Tim Horner on TV.
Yeah, Tim Horner was very small,
Yeah.
and but even Steamboat, I think, was only like 209 or something. Like he was, but I remember a veteran in Ontario walked around the dressing room. I won't say who it was, but one of my favorite guys, and he just pointed to every wrestler. How much do you weigh? 198. Okay, 208. How much do you weigh? He added 10 pounds to every guy. He said, never tell your real weight. Lie, because Steamboat was always 230, 240. No, he wasn't. He was 209. 198. He wasn't a big guy, but they would lie about their weights as well. But it was you're larger than life, and that was the whole idea. And I've finished train of thought.
We talked to Brian Solomon about the Sheik.
Okay.
And we were discussing that, and he said he has his medical records from when he was in the Army. So he was 5'9" and a bit.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I knew he was short, yeah, but he was a big boy though.
But he was probably 210, maybe, and his heaviest maybe 230. But he was always billed at 242 or something, right?
Yeah.
He was never 242 pounds.
No, but he never appeared small.
They never appeared small because he was way larger than life.
Yeah, and he was, because we used to meet them outside of Maple Leaf Gardens. I mean, Elio, or if I was with Elio, or if I was with Greg, or whoever I was with, you'd meet them outside the gardens, and they were huge to me. I mean, Lord Leighton would have that. He was like 6'7" to me. I don't know how big he was.
He was really big, yeah.
One of my favorite things, I might have told this story before. We were outside, right outside the Queensberry wrestling office, if you know where that was. Yeah. I'm a little older than Wes, so I know.
Was that across the street?
Yeah.
No, there was one in the Maple Leaf Gardens at one time.
Yeah, and I remember there was some guys across the street yelling at him, saying, "Hey, you Lord Leighton, blah, 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 you kangaroo, blah, blah, blah." So he raises his hand as if he's going to chop them. He's across the street. And he starts throwing. They get in their car, sped off, and went right into a pole. And so all the guys were laughing. But that's what it was like. And, the Incredible Destroyer, who used to be a regular Cauliflower Alley, but he would come out of his car with the mask on. Yeah. I mean, there was no walking in and trying to. No, he wore the mask all the time. He would, so he would come in with the mask, and it was all kayfabe. Dory Funk Jr., when he signed his autograph for me, was in the middle of the street. He says, come on. And he's crossing the street and was signing my autograph as he's going across Carlton Street. And Gene Kiniski did the same thing exactly. So, although Gene Kiniski's autograph is fading, and I feel so bad. I don't know what to do. I know it's fading so bad. I don't know what kind of marker he used, but yeah, I mean, I like doing the selfies now. I don't do autographs anymore. I like the pictures better. But back then, it was pretty hard to use your Polaroid or whatever. I had to use Sheikah camera. Couldn't do a selfie back then.
The first card I went to was at the Gardens, and I think it was one of the Mid-Atlantic cards. And Strombo was on the card, and I was outside just by myself because I didn't know anybody. Although I think I met Terry Dart by accident at the time because he was everywhere, right?
Yep.
With his stuff. And I was outside, and I said, "Excuse me, sir, can I have a picture?" And he's like, "Oh, sure." And I was like, I took a picture, and I was like, after you looking at the picture, you're going, "Wow, you're as tall as me." At the time, I was like 5'9" and a bit. And then
at the time,
yeah. Well, I'm like Jim. I'm advancing in age.
Yeah.
Although I'm slimming down. I'm like 170 pounds. I've lost.
Maturing, like a fine wine.
Yes. And then
speaking of fine wine, I'm just going to leave us for a moment while I get a second beverage.
Oh, I've got one right here for you.
Next door.
Yeah, it's just next door.
A cold right here.
Oh man.
It's all ready to go. I know we were only supposed to have one beer, but when you're having fun.
Yeah, whatever.
But Wes, I might just, you never know. I go to, my son's in Saskatchewan, so one of these days.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Of course, I'd have to bring my wife. Sorry.
Well, I have one of those too.
Oh, good. We can stick them together and they can talk recipes.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
2022, right? That's politically incorrect.
The door's closed. Thank goodness.
Hey, guess what? Lynn watches the show.
Oh, love you, Lynn. You're one of my favorites. You were always my favorite wife. Fine. We will never watch this. So.
One thing I always talk to Wes is like the key thing of the wrestling magazine, and I showed you the Terry Justice binder earlier. I know you have more than me, but he was so influential, in my opinion. He was the social media before there was social media.
Well, that's the thing. When I was saying, like, in the early years when I had the Ronald DeBrat's newsletters and stuff, I don't know if you guys knew this, but, Elio would put his little bit of his personality in his newsletters, where everybody else were just doing results.
Yes.
Terry Justice included. He was doing results. Somewhere along the line years ago, now you're a historian, so my fact basis may be more rumor basis, but I had read where Meltzer based a lot of his stuff on Elio because he decided to put opinion in his newsletter.
Yes.
And he had read a couple of his things, and because Elio used to call him, he hated Dewey Robertson, which was my favorite. So Elio and always would get so mad at each other, but he would call him Chewy Dewey and all this stuff. And people liked that, and it was sort of changing things where, I'm hoping that it's an older crowd listening to your show. If you're younger, I love you to death, but can you imagine watching wrestling without the internet? Can you? If you can't, where we really thought, I have 2 university degrees. It's real to me. Like, yes. It's real. I've been part of the business for 22 years. It's my anniversary, the day that I, retire. And 22 years of wrestling. It's real to me. Like, it really means a lot. If I go to a show, if I'm going to WWE or if I'm going to AEW or whatever, I'd love NWA to come. Please come, Billy Corgan. I get right into it. I really do. I mean, it takes me a minute or two because, you know all the stuff. I've been in the dressing room. I know how it works. And I get right into it. There's been shows where I've been reffing where I all of a sudden, oh, shoot, that's what to count. Because I'm just enthralled with what they're doing. Like, there's some matches that are just transcend, normal. They're just better than what you've seen lately. And Josh Alexander's been every one of those ones. But
I think when Meltzer started saying Andre the Giant Statue and Junk Food Dog and stuff like that, I was telling Jesse, but we did a show on Dallas, and he used to call the whatever the Dallas WCCW or whatever.
Yeah, world class.
World class. They used to call it the worthless title because it was part of Fort Worth and part of Dallas, right?
Yeah.
and
oh, that's funny.
For a while, it was comical, but now you look back at Elio's newsletter now, and you go, it bothers me because he hates Dewey. Yeah. I mean, it's evident.
Yeah.
He wouldn't just say Dewey pinned the Iron Sheik or the Iron Sheik pinned. Finally, Dewey lost the bloody title to the Iron Sheik. God, exactly. What took him so long? And he hated Dewey.
But the frame of reference you've got to have, and this is where your young viewers and listeners have to realize there's no internet or anything. So our source of information, number one, is 6 months old.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. Okay, I never really thought of it like that.
Magazine, it was 6 months old. Looking back at it now, I'm realizing a heck of a lot of it was fiction. He made stories up. The first magazine I ever bought was, "My God, Bobby, what happened to your face?" And it was a picture of Bobby Heenan with the crimson mask, right? Yeah. But they would make up stories about it. Like, it wasn't particular. I mean, I'm sure there was a grain of truth in it, but we would get that 6 months later. So we didn't get, I don't know what happened at AEW last night. I'm kind of interested because I heard MJF was holding out, so I don't know if he showed up or not. But that's the kind of thing I could look up on Google right now and find out.
I've watched half the event so far.
Yeah, we didn't have computers. The newspaper coverage was a little square with the results from Maple Leaf Gardens with no explanation, just the results. I remember once in a while
there was a story.
Pardon me?
Once in a while there was a story. Once in a while.
Yeah, Toronto CTV used to cover it a teeny bit. So once in a while, but they'd get it wrong. And I remember they said, "Oh, and the mask came off the assassin, and it was the Stomper, Archie Gold." No, it wasn't. It was the Stomper, Ben Justice, or not Ben. His other partner, who and
Guy,
was like,
Guy Mitchell.
Got them totally. Say again.
Guy Mitchell.
That's who it was. Yes, Guy Mitchell, exactly. And I remember being so excited. Archie Gold. But yeah, so I mean, they would show like a 30-second clip of the wrestling, and I would be so excited to be, I'd be going to high school at 11:45 at night. You'd be waiting for that sports cast because they might have 2 minutes of wrestling, and then Norm Ziccarelli, I think his name was, or Frank Ziccarelli, started writing articles in the Sun. But that was it, and you weren't getting very much information. So the information we were getting was, number one, and I'm talking the 70s, magazines that were 6 months old, newsletters were just starting. So you were just getting a page of results. I mean, Terrence Matulak from Winnipeg, it was all results. I wrote for them because I know we would just send in clippings and you do all this kind of stuff. Now we realize how valuable that was. It was like, collecting history. But, and I remember in Philadelphia, I was in Chicago for that ill-fated weekend, but one of the guys from Philadelphia, Jay Ward, I think his name was, from Philadelphia, came up. "You're Jim Connelly. I know you because you write for that." It was like he knew my name because I had written for this small little newsletter, which was, this, I don't know, a quarter of an inch thick of just results. That's all it was, clippings from, United States and Canada. And sometimes it was just the advertisements, the coming soon or whatever. And that was all the information we were getting. Now you go on YouTube, how to be a wrestler. Here's how you do this move. Here's how the secrets of wrestling. It's all free on the internet now. So, I mean, the illusion is gone. And I got to tell you, we really believed it was real.
So when Terry Dart clipped an ad out of the London newspaper and finally got around to mailing it to Terry Justice in Rochester, even though it's close.
Yeah.
And then he put them together to finally put him into a bulletin, although he did do weekly bulletins.
Yep.
And they weren't really that far behind, but they weren't nowhere near up to date.
No.
You'd be seeing at Christmas time if you got one at Christmas, it would be the stuff from the summer.
Exactly.
Without fail.
Exactly. And Terry Justice was an interesting guy. I liked him. And he also was president
You ever met him?
of Tommy Gilbert fan club. So I can tell you that I walked down the street one time with Elio chatting with Terry Justice, and behind him was me talking to Tommy Gilbert's son, Eddie Gilbert, the famous wrestler who was 16 years old. And I wished we had seen him again because we just connected automatically. And he was, "Oh, I'm going to be a wrestler someday." "Are you?" "Well, maybe you will be." For the young people out there, Eddie Gilbert became a very famous wrestler and part of history. So, yeah.
You've met Terry Justice. That's kind of cool, man.
A couple of times, yeah.
So, Jim, I got a question for you.
Pardon me?
Jim, I got a question for you. I saw a video last week that blew my mind. I was amazed. That was really, really cool. The moves were.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yes, well, here's this making a short story long. I did something that wrestlers around Ontario really hated. And if you're listening from the States or other places in Canada, you can probably relate to the people in your area. And as a referee, I'm over.
Yeah.
Jesse's been to shows, and I'm over, and I don't know what I've done. I do a little.
It's like Harry D. Harry D's over, man.
Yeah,
you go to Destiny.
Well, Harry D's over because he's just the best referee in Canada.
Yeah.
He has refereed Hogan and some of the guys, and he's a great guy. Him and Jimmy Corderas, who's also, you might remember the name from WWE.
I went to their seminar, buddy.
Yep. And
it was perfect.
A couple of the places. I used to go to them too, and so I'm over. I used to tell them I'm not a great referee, but I'm old. And years ago, I couldn't get booked anywhere. So I decided, what's my worst? Because I'm old. I know, let's play up to my old. I'm going to be old school. So I happened to be working with Steve Carino that week. And I said, "You're king of old school. Would it really bother you if I called myself old school?" He said, "That's hysterical." He says, "Sure." In fact, I wished him happy birthday the other day, and he wrote me back saying, "Thanks, old school." So he actually remembered my name.
Nice.
One of the only big names that actually knows who I am. And but yeah, I'm over. I think it's because I'm old, and often at shows they'll fans will yell out old school and stuff. And I've actually had some of my favorite wrestlers, when I can't make a show, will phone me and say, listen to this. And it'll be old school, old school. So that's pretty cool and nice. So I was offered an opportunity to sell merch. So I did. And I sold old school shirts. And I sold 100 shirts in 3 weeks. I found out that that's really good. I didn't know that. I made some money, which was the first time I've ever made money in wrestling. So if you're thinking of refereeing, there's no money. There's no money unless you're reffing in the town that you live in. You're not going to make much money. It is fun and it's exciting, but it's not. If you're thinking you're going to be on WWE next week, sorry. But I made some money. So with that money, I put it back into wrestling. And at 63 years old, I trained to be a wrestler. Now, did I have any illusions? Nope. I did it. Locally, there's a gentleman named Rip Impact, a nice young guy. Yeah. He has a school, and he had a per hour charge for private lessons. So I went in and I did it. What I did is use the money that I made from my merch and paid for wrestling lessons. So I took about 10, 15 lessons, 2 hours each. So I was probably 40, 50 hours in the ring. The clip that you're talking about is on my YouTube station. I believe it's called Eddie Old School on YouTube. And you'll find everything I'm doing, he's whispering in my ear saying, do this, do that, because I couldn't remember anything. But it looks really good. It was fun. And he was so easy to work with. And what I did it for was, as a wrestler, as a referee, I'm one of the few referees who didn't wrestle. Now, Harry D, I don't believe wrestled either. I could be wrong about that. I know Jim Corderas did not.
He told me who's Kazebo got him in. Kazebo's dad got him into the business.
Yeah. Wayne Cashman.
Oh, okay. Yep. Well, Harry D got in because I was chatting with a gentleman who is a cousin of Chris Tolis, John Tolis. And he's a wrestler, and his name is escaping me right now, and I feel so bad about it because he was such a nice guy to me out of Junction Wrestling. And he sat me down, and we just became instant friends because he's older and he's a Tolis. And he was saying, oh, there's a reason Harry D's great. He said, Tolis lives down the street from him. Dewey's down here. He grew up with all these wrestlers. So I mean, he had no choice but becoming involved in the business. So he didn't have to wrestle particularly. Jimmy Corderas was all timing. He was, taking pictures and doing things with Elio and stuff. And one day they said, do you have some shoes and stuff? And get in the ring and we'll see what we can do. I don't know if he had any illusions. My story is almost the exact same, except mine's much more low key. Would I trade places with either of them? Nope. So I found out later that Elio, there was people that had told me that Elio thought that I was mad at him because I didn't get the opportunity to referee for WWE and all that stuff. And I was going, no, I was a teacher, elementary school teacher. I wouldn't trade that for $1 million. I've lived the best life anybody could possibly live. I've, been a teacher, which is my dream, and involved in the wrestling business. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. 22 years involved. I still don't believe it. I still don't believe it. And I loved every second of it, but it's time. There's a time you have to, say to yourself, it's time. And now's the time for me to let the young guys do it. Am I ever going to ref again? Never say never.
Yes, you are. June 25th, Greektown.
I'm Terry Funk. I've already retired like 6 times. So
June 25th, Greektown, Jim. Old
I
school.
know. Actually, I got to tell you, Channing Decker, the promoter of Greektown, great wrestler, good friend, loyal friend. Certainly would like me to come back, but I don't think that's going to happen.
No, just go as a fan. I'm just
not fast enough anymore for the quality matches, like for the really good matches. I kind of blew a Josh Alexander match in Guelph not that long ago. I just wasn't in position. I can't keep up with them anymore. And as I say, the 2-year layoff really hurt me more than maybe these guys did. And I keep myself, I'm not in bad shape, but I'm not in the kind of shape you can be in to referee at the level I should be. With some of Ontario is just such a hotbed for wrestling. The quality coming out of Ontario, I know the West gets mad because they're so small, and I do too, kind of, but they really are good wrestlers. There's a lot of guys here that, Mark Wheeler and a few of them, Tyler Turva, John Atlas. These guys, well, let's not say him. No, I think he's great, but he's one of the guys that Wes and I. He's small.
He's
The guys
small,
I've talked
but
for all.
he just fought actually at the last Destiny show. He had a match with Josh Alexander, and I thought, I mean, I'm a big Fuerza guy. You know,
I love Fuerza.
He's a Durham region guy. You know what I mean? So, but they are small. Like,
there's 3 guys that I named that should be wrestling somewhere else.
You mentioned Cody. Was his name Cody Diener?
Cody Diener is now. It used to be Cody Steele.
So he was on a few of those Guelph shows that Tim and I went to with you. And the first time I saw him, I was, wow, throw 4 inches on that guy and keep his bulk and his muscle the same and make him a little bit bigger. And because he's such a good looking guy. He is so good looking.
Yeah.
He's doing really well in Impact now.
He's doing TNA Impact, whatever they call it this week. And he's doing very well there. And actually, just to make Jesse mad again, one of my favorite things in life is to make Jesse jealous. I do have an alter ego. My alter ego.
Are you my Pat Patterson right now? Like,
well, as you know, I'm a referee, and I just told a story about merchandise. Now, what did I do with that money? Oh yeah, I trained in wrestling. So sometimes this guy named Zumba King, my alter ego, comes out. So the last match I did, I tag teamed with Cody Diener.
Oh.
Sorry, Jesse.
I've seen you come out in that Zumba outfit, enter a battle royal, and then big time Bill Kohler looked at you, and you're like, "Well, see you later."
You know, it wasn't Bill Collier.
Oh, who was? I forget.
That was my first match ever as Zumba King, and I remember Puff looked into the camera and went, "It's old school," you know? And it was a Royal Rumble, and it was actually John Atlas,
yes,
and another gentleman in the ring, and the idea was that John, I got to remember how this worked. I don't know if it was John Atlas who ran at me and I ducked and they fell out of the ring. It was a guy named Wardlow. You might have heard of him.
Yes, I remember that.
Who's now
I remember that now.
Now he's a big boy that Wes would like.
Buddy, this guy is jacked up like a truck downtown, bro. He is huge.
I refereed a match with him and Tyson Dukes, who would be another guy in the same category as Cody Diener and the other guys, who was one of those guys who just missed making it, like, big time. He made a TNA a little bit.
They brought him back for the Cruiserweight Classic.
Yes, they did. And there's a guy up north in Sudbury named Tornado. You might have seen him around. He's been around forever. And Tornado and Tyson and a few of those guys had the record for the most TV matches for WWE who weren't signed wrestlers.
Okay.
Because they would do the dark matches and everything else. That's how respected they were. So there are, I mean, Ontario, as I started this out, was Ontario has so many great wrestlers. When the Americans come up here, they're always surprised at the quality up here. And you know, they come up as much as they can. An interesting thing, if you didn't know, for the younger viewers and even the older ones, is the unfair rules. Because now, as I understand it, I've refereed one match in the States, and that was in Vegas at the Cauliflower Alley. I did a battle royal, and I just stood there and did nothing, but it was exciting for me. It was on my bucket list, and I wanted to do it. But the way it goes is, an American can come here, and it's under the same rules as a rock and roll star kind of thing, or an entertainer of some sort. They can make, as I understand it, something like up to $10,000 a year coming to Canada and working. Canadians can't work in the States, period.
Yeah, that's why Speedball could never get signed anywhere.
Yeah, because we are taking an American's job.
Yeah.
So what happens is the companies like Ring of Honor or whoever has to buy or work out getting a visa. So that's what happened to Mike Elgin.
I went to high school with him.
Did you? Yeah, he ended up having troubles with when he was working with Ring of Honor, because he thought they got the visa, they thought he got the visa, and he didn't have a visa. So he was world champion at the time, and see you later.
Yeah, he came home.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, and it's expensive to get a visa too. I know a young lady went down to the States to do it, and it cost her a lot of money to get the visa. And I'm not going to name her name because I don't, it's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's an unfair rule to me, because the Americans who come up here go, oh my God, you guys are so good.
Yeah. There's
But
a lot of good wrestling in this country.
Now, do we go down to the States? Of course we do. You know,
Yes.
customs.
Like
But
for me,
I,
like you said,
I never did. I didn't get paid for the show I did, so I think I'm legal. I think I did everything right.
yeah.
I didn't get paid. I didn't take anybody's job. I was an extra referee. I didn't. So I mean,
Yeah, when you say like Ontario's packed too, it is across the country because I follow a lot of stuff right now in Quebec too, with the IWS and all that. You know, Matt Angel, top guy for me, Marco Estrada. You know what I mean? Tons of guys out there. Like Speedball came out from there. I think the Evil Uno and Stu Grayson from AEW are from out there too. But they were called like the Super Smash Brothers.
I've reffed them all. Everybody you mentioned except the one. Actually, my 2000th match was Speedball versus. This is a good international Canadian match. Speedball and Matt Angel and Danny Davis from the East Coast. And I think it was Danny Davis or something like that. I don't know if it was Danny Davis, but it's something like that. And Speedball, and the guy who won, Aiden Prince from somewhere who works down in the Windsor area. Yeah. So it was all Canada, but that was it just happened to be my 2000 match. It was a 4-way. How exciting was that? I mean, Speedball's, you know, I remember, I don't know if I'm talking at a school, but I remember Ron Hutchison saw Speedball and said, if I ever started a promotion, I'd build it all around him. Now, Speedball, for Wes's sake, is 150 pounds, but he's just different. It's like martial arts, but acrobatics.
Okay.
And it's just everything. And
he does a lot of like, because he wears the headband and stuff, so I always got the Steamboat vibes. But then again, like you're talking to a guy who grew up in the 90s who only knew Steamboat with the headband and the, red dress and all that. But he's so quick in his kicks and his martial arts.
Exactly.
I've seen him versus Josh Alexander twice at Destiny Wrestling.
Okay, I reffed that match. I reffed that match once at PWA in Kitchener, and I would rank that maybe as the best match I've ever refereed ever. And Josh always says I'm blowing smoke up his ass, but I always said of my top 5 matches, I think he's in 4 of them. Yeah. There was also another one, and I'm trying not to bring it up because it was a wrestler sent to Canada from, I believe it was Noah in Japan. And there's not a chance I can pronounce his name. And I probably refereed 5 of his matches. And
did you see him in Guelph once against Josh Alexander? Yes.
Kato Kiyomoto, something like that. And I apologize to him because he ended up going back to Noah and winning championships. Like, he's a very famous wrestler. That match against Josh as well. I don't think I reffed it I think I reffed it in Kitchener. Maybe somebody else reffed it in Guelph. But he was just outstanding. And, you know, it's just nice to see that, you know, there's such good wrestling in Canada. So we should be very proud. I'm excited about Vance, Nevada, writing a book about Canadian wrestling and the history of that. So I don't know if you know about that, but I'm sure you do.
We do.
Wes is smiling. So.
I spent 3 hours last night updating for him. So
he would write me and I'd go, Vance, I'm not a historian. And I keep sending it, said, go to Terry Dart, go to Greg Oliver. I don't know anything, please. I'm a fan. You know, we're all different people. Some people are out there going, you know, I'm an AEW fan. I just go to the shows. I love it. Well, then why do we pick on people and say, well, you know, you're a historian and you're this, you like it. Great. Yeah. That's awesome. You know, you're the same as me. I'm an emotional fan. I buy into it. It's real when I watch it. It's totally real.
And Jim, I've been a fan since I was 10 or 9 or something. And I just, you talk about a dream come true. This is a dream come true for me.
Oh, absolutely. You're doing amazing stuff. You two are doing amazing stuff. And as I said, I didn't appreciate so much until things like the clippings I'm talking about and stuff, and realizing that people don't understand that was it. That was our only sense of, of any kind of connection, so I could talk to Terrence Matulek back in the 80s. And I remember one of the, I told you about that, Wrestling International, whatever it was in Chicago, for a weekend. I sat with people all over the United States. I remember we sat around a big round table at one point. I don't know if it was the whole convention, because it was like 18 of them, but it might have been. And we all went around the table and found out we were all from different cities. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm from New York. I'm from that. So we started talking baseball for a minute. At that time was the year that Expos were going to win everything, and they ended up having a shortened year. They said, you're the most hated guy at this table because you're from Canada.
Yes.
Like, oh, I'm sorry. But it was all about the baseball. So, I mean, it was a weekend that you could sit and talk to people and in a logical way go, between the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express, I feel that, and you're talking about wrestling with people, and you're not an idiot, you're not a moron, you're not the stupidest guy at the high school or whatever. You were actually accepted, and you were talking wrestling the entire weekend. That's what I get at Cauliflower Alley. I can talk about wrestling all weekend, and I, you know what? Here's a little secret. In the dressing room, here's the biggest rule if you ever think about becoming a wrestler. Mouth shut, ears open. The number one thing you teach green guys, and I'm 67 years old, and I'm an active referee at this point in time. Well, active with the quotations around it. But I'm the same. I keep my mouth shut and I listen. And I, especially when there's veterans in there and everything. So, yeah, I mean, it's my favorite passion. I used to subscribe to hockey news. I used to subscribe to tennis magazines. I don't play tennis anymore. Yeah. Hockey, I haven't watched since Dave Dunn and back in Jim Connelly and those guys. And I was a passionate hockey fan. But wrestling, I've never really stopped. Even when I get mad, oh, this AEW stuff's crap. Oh, this WWE stuff's crap. NWA's crap, but it reminds me of the old stuff, so I still watch it, and I pay money to watch it. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever totally, get the wrestling as a fan. And I've passed it on to my son. I mean, today's my son's birthday. Happy birthday, Michael. I know you won't be listening, but whatever. But the picture I posted on my Facebook is him and I meeting Roddy Piper, which was, really an exciting moment for both of us. And he'll, every, Thursday night, he'll write back, and we'll write back and forth. And that's our commonality. We talk about AEW, how mad we get. He's so opinionated about it. And my son is 230 pounds. I go, why didn't you wrestle? Yes. But he's one of those guys who became a successful teacher and made lots of money. And
Yeah.
We at the first Titans in Toronto dinner, they had it in a great location, and there was a massive foyer there. And I remember meeting Greg Masorjak, Greg Grog from Pittsburgh, and Lord Zoltan.
Yeah.
We just sat there all night and talked, just like what you said. And it was so bizarre to be excited about talking about something that you loved, and that person loved it just as much as you did. Yeah. Instead of me trying to tell my wife or my friend, oh man, what'd you do last night, Wes? We were at the bar drinking. Well, I went to the Gardens to see wrestling. Oh, why? That's stupid. But but you should have seen it was Flair versus Snuka. Like, who? What?
Oh yeah. I have friends who don't know who Ric Flair are, and it boggles my mind. So I have a friend who said, "Oh, I'll come to Vegas with you one year. We'll go down," and he didn't know who Flair was. I said, "You can't come." I said I would be embarrassed to have you, and you can't. He is the world's nicest guy. And I said, you can't come. I said, if you don't know, I have lots of friends who know a little bit. They would be fine. But if you don't know who Ric Flair is, you're just going to embarrass yourself there. Yes, everything is my memories. It's like, Jesse, picture 40 years from now. And you're in a room full of guys talking about, remember that upstart AEW, and remember Vince McMahon? I mean, I can barely remember that guy. Hey, what an idiot he was, And,
oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just like we're talking about Harold Ballard or Frank Tunney. Like, I mean, it's like, to me, I can picture them both. Like, I remember Harold Ballard and King Clancy walked through the Gardens once during a wrestling match. Well, I'm crying, of course, because can you tell I'm an emotional guy? But because all the blue collar fans, because I got a couple of university degrees. That's not a brag, it's just a fact. And I was never a bright student. I didn't like school particularly, but they got the biggest cheer in the world. And everybody hates Harold Ballard, but he was a common man. They all loved him. And King Clancy was a legend. But here's these wrestling fans just going crazy. If that had about an arena full of hockey fans, they would have booed.
They would have booed him. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was a hockey fan at the time, so it was so torn, but I always liked Ballard. I said, there's nobody who wanted to win a Stanley Cup more than Ballard. He just didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And he was passionate, but just he made a lot of dumb mistakes, and he thought with his motion instead of brain. But we won't get too off track with Harold Ballard, but just saying that wrestling fans are the best. And I used to tell people that. I'd say, you stand out front, you have your best friend who's the guy in front of you. Never met him before, you'll never see him again. But for an hour, you're talking, and you have to gauge. I remember being in Stampede. The only time I ever got to Stampede wrestling in Calgary was my year of my marriage. We went, the boys, we went to Calgary for the Stampede, and my last chance as a bachelor. And I had a few chances. Whatever. That's another story. But I'm just saying that I'm in line. So as I said, you get in line for any of these conventions or these wrestling shows, and the guy in front of you and the guy behind you is your best friend for a night. And the guy in front of it, they didn't know anything out in Calgary, and I knew so much more than they did. It was really, it killed me not to tell them stuff. Oh, Harley Race is injured, so they got in Nick Bockwinkel because he's the new NWA champion. I'm just going, oh my God, please no. No, you don't know anything. Yeah, that's really great.
I liked it back in the day when people, that was so funny you bring something like that up, when people would say, oh yeah, I heard Nick Bockwinkel won the NWA championship in Los Angeles.
Yep.
And just
But you can't blame them, because back then, this was 81, but I mean, what information were they getting?
What were they getting?
Magazines and which was fiction, and newsletters that just had results. So you had to make all the decisions yourself. There was nobody to talk to. You couldn't go on a show or listen to Busted Open, which is a radio show on Sirius, but it's also a podcast, which is free because I'm cheap. And you're hearing inside
That's the teacher
stuff.
talking.
Yeah, I mean, it's inside.
That's the teachers union.
Yeah, exactly. But inside stuff, and you're going, you know everything now. And I mean, most of the stuff they're saying is true. I mean, I'm not saying everything is. I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions about wrestling. I've been in the dressing room. Do I know everything? Nope. Nope. I don't. There's a lot of stuff I don't know, and the wrestlers don't tell me everything.
That's right.
And that's, as I said before, that's why I wanted to take the lessons. I don't know what a bump felt like, so I do now. It hurts.
Yeah.
The mat is what's under it? 2-inch plywood. That's what's under the mat. There's no cushion. It hurts. You hit your, what hurts the most? And it was weird because it was one of my best friends, Turbo Ned Tyson, who I've known, I went to high school with, whatever. He tossed me out of the ring without telling me he was going to toss me out of the ring. And my thigh, the back of my calf, the back of my calf hit the rope as I rolled out. I have never been in so much pain in my life. I couldn't walk for 3 weeks. The rope is a plastic cover over metal twisted. I'm not a technical guy, but steel, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a twisted cable. It's a metal cable with a little bit of plastic over it. When you hit it, it hurts. I've been clotheslined by Josh Alexander. The rope hurt more.
Yeah.
Josh hurt a lot, a real lot.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I clotheslined Josh. I just remembered that. But that was that was a thrill.
Jim, if we have to, who's your favorite? If you see a lot of shows, so oh God,
right.
don't get me started on this guy.
All about.
What would say your favorite Maple Leaf Garden show that you can remember?
What was my say it again? Because I was flexing. Sorry.
Yeah, no, Wes was flexing. Yeah. Oh my God. What, you got Zumba Wes and Zumba
Harry
Kid?
D doesn't do that, even though he's built like a shit. He's incredibly built.
Yeah.
I would do things like that to entertain the crowd before the matches. Go ahead.
Could you remember some of your favorite cards that you've seen at Maple Leaf Gardens? One that stands out, hands down.
Probably the one that stands out, and I think I've mentioned this before because I don't have a lot of stories. People say I have 4 stories. I just tell them over and over again. Probably the one I wasn't expecting. There's 2. One was a match back in the 70s. One was back in the 70s. And I remember, I don't have any history. I don't have any background, and somebody is going to correct me, and that's fine. Abdullah Butcher was not advertised for this show. And don't ask me the matches. I don't remember. He interfered. If there was 8 matches, he interfered in 6 of them.
Okay. Wow.
Coming out and you'd throw an elbow at the end of the match. It was the craziest, wildest night I've ever heard of. And the idea that he wasn't even advertised. Now, these were the days, and Wes might remember. I know he's a little younger than me. Abdullah Butcher was fit. Like, he was a big boy, but he was fit, and he threw the best elbow drop. I have arguments with Johnny Valentine and Greg Valentine, but I do think Abdullah had the best one. And I was so excited because the other fans it was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that? It's like now in AEW you have, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a big name, like Dolph Ziggler that comes to AEW and interferes in every match. Like, it makes no sense. And it made no sense to anybody. And to this day, I don't know why they did it, but I was so excited about it. Because you got to remember they had enhancement workers back there, so it might have been Mike Lauren or somebody had thrown an elbow on them, and I'd just jump up and be it's Abdullah the Butcher, and I'm so excited. The other one was another unannounced one, which was a show with, and I know I told you this one before, but it was a show that wasn't advertised, it wasn't a thing, and it was a match, and I get it wrong, but it was one of the Bill Irwin, I believe, one of the Long Riders, and somebody. No, I know who it was. I'll tell you the partner in a minute. But it was on the other corner was Giant Baba, and my very favorite wrestler of Japan of all time was Jumbo Tsuruta.
Yeah. And
the Bill Irwin's partner was Bruiser Brody.
Yeah.
Just
that Brody guy.
And a gentleman, an Asian gentleman in a white coat, white suit jacket. I still remember that as clear as bell. Did the announcing in Japanese, and I realized this is a match taped for Japan, so that they could say, "Oh, this is from Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto, match between." Yeah. And it was beyond, because we didn't have any information. I couldn't, I can't look up on the internet the next day. My encyclopedia is not going to help me. Yeah. There's no newsletter who's going to explain it, because they wouldn't know any more than we would. So to this day, I have no idea what happened or how it happened or what it was. But it blew my mind as being such a super fan. And I would grab everything I could. I subscribed to the Torch. I subscribed to Meltzer. I subscribed to everything. I have met Meltzer before, too. And Wade Keller's a friend of mine. Just saying that to Jesse.
Guy, man. Like, I'm like, these are the guys I listen to and like want to be. And you're like, yeah, this guy's a friend of mine. Like,
So yeah, you mentioned that match, and the thing that is so bizarre about it, and we talk about it on some of our Facebook pages, is that they were here to take the belts back from the Sheik's promotion in Detroit, because Randy Scott and John Bonello had the belts a week before.
Oh, okay.
On Wildman shows. Yeah. So, and as bizarre as it sounds, that it would go from John Bonello and Randy Scott to Detroit to Toronto, Brody and Irwin and those two, and then back to Japan.
Yeah, because I think that was Bruiser Brody's only appearance.
Pardon me?
Go ahead. Yeah, I believe it was Brody's only appearance too. I don't remember him ever.
It was the only time he was ever in Toronto. Yeah, definitely.
And it was just a one-stop. AC, the guy who wrote the Maple Leaf Wrestling, he does the Maple Leaf Wrestling website. So I talk to him all the time, and he told me that that's his only appearance, and they just stopped.
And as embarrassing as it is, at the time, I didn't have a clue who he was. I just looked at him and said, this guy is huge. I knew Bill Irwin because he was one of the long riders out of Grand Prix, or not out of Grand Prix, out of wrestling in AWA. But, and I'd seen him before with his brother, the Irwin brothers. But Scott Hogg Irwin, I believe, was his brother's name. But yeah, it was exciting. But I can't not tell you, the first match I saw that was so exciting was, I'll give you 2 more matches from Maple Leaf Gardens that were highlights, was Harley Race versus Pat O'Connor in 1973. First championship match I got to see, and it was amazing. And I told you about this on the other podcast. It was the first suplex I ever saw, and it was on the ramp, the famous ramp from Canada, from Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens. And the other one would have been the Terry Funk the Harley Race Terry Funk title change at a time where there was no title changes unless it was St. Louis, or one of the the mid-Atlantic kind of areas. They didn't have, Toronto just didn't have any title changes. So, and there wasn't a lot, there wasn't a lot of title changes. People held on to their belts for a while. So there was a moment of total 16,000 totally silent. And then they burst into explosion because nobody could believe it.
Yeah, it's not real.
No, it's not real. And the goosebumps and the thing that night, it's blah, blah, blah at the end of the show. And then the next day you go to school or whatever you do, and it's like nobody's talking about it. So it's like you can't talk about it. Hey guys, I saw a title change. Never mind.
Wes, what about you, man? If you had to think of some shows like that stand out to you at the Gardens, I know you went to a couple.
I have to admit that I saw not that many.
Didn't you go see Superstar Billy Graham and he didn't show?
Yes, that was the first show I went to. I bought tickets only to see him, and he didn't show, and that's okay. Like, and after the fact, I've read into this history about his reign that yes, he was actually injured. It wasn't a double booking or something like that. But yeah,
they missed their flights. I mean, they missed their flights.
Flair
traveling every single day.
Flair and Snuka. These guys were on the road. Like, yeah. Like we talk about on our different podcast shows and on our Pages pages, that the guys like Flair and Snuka, sometimes it was 5 shows, Friday to Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then back at it again the next weekend, and then back at it.
And a lot of times 2 shows in a day.
One day off, maybe in 2 months. Well, there was a famous thing that floated around with Flair's schedule. And in whatever year, 81 or something, it's like mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So you're looking at how much we love him because of his talent and what he's done and everything he did. He did it every night after night after night, traveling, partying, everything else that he did too. It wasn't like he, was like Bob Backlund and he left the arena and went home and did an hour's worth of exercise and went to bed. He was doing exercises. It wasn't the same kind.
Yeah.
He lived the 4 horsemen lifestyle.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God.
It's amazing though, because like you see that, and it's like when I think of shows, my uncle took me to my first show when I was like 2. He said he thinks it was a steel cage match in Oshawa.
Okay.
Between Dusty and Bossman. I recall my earliest memory is Bret Hart and the Mountie and the Smoking Guns. So me looking into it, that was 93. I always tell Wes that I was fortunate enough growing up with a Superfan. His name was Eddie from Ajax, and back in the day, you had that secret black box.
Yes.
And, 1 black box and 8 VCRs going, right? So I got 2 tapes every month, and that's how I got it. But it's funny how it's like we talked all night, and it's just like it goes from the tapes, the magazines, and I got a big trip. Like how you say you meet people, and I met an old friend, probably of both of yours. What's his name, Wes? Warren, I think. I met
in Hamilton.
Yes. Yeah. And he's like, oh, yeah, I know Wes. I'm like, Terry Dart? And the first thing he said, well, what do you want to know about Terry? The only reason that Scott D'Amore stopped and talked to me was because I threw Terry Dart's name out there, right? And I said, Scott D'Amore. I'm like, hey, man, how are you? Wait, I'm like, can I have a second of your time just about Terry Dart? And he just stopped dead in his tracks, like, what did you just say? Right, and that's another Canadian guy I think he's like big time into Impact too, right? So,
yeah, sure. Yep.
And he's helped Josh and now Speedball and all them try to get their visas.
Absolutely. Yep. And as I say, Terry Dart was sort of eclipsed what I would call the super fans now. I could name them around Ontario right now, and a lot of them. It's a little bit easier to get in the business now too. So a lot of them are getting into the business, which. Sometimes I say you were a better fan. You were a really good fan. There's nothing wrong with being a fan. Like, you're in the business now, and now you're a nobody in a business.
I'm going to Quebec this week, man. My first time leaving the province for some shows. I'm going to the FML, and then from there we're going to go to Mississauga. So we're driving to Quebec from Whitby, and then on Sunday, Quebec to Mississauga.
You're insane. Wes and I would have done that back in the day, but You're still insane.
You're copying exactly what Terry would do. And he told me stories for years and years and years of Wednesday night, they wouldn't think twice. 4 or 5 people get in his car and they drive to Niagara Falls on a Wednesday night from London. It's like 3 hours away. Go see a wrestling show and drive back. And nothing.
Well, I'm going with Ontario Superfan Chops. And
Yeah,
that guy, he travels. He's everywhere.
Yeah, Chops is great. I love him. And
yeah, James is awesome, man.
We get along. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago. We were chatting, and I was at a show with him. But yeah, he would be one of the ones I would consider as a super fan. In fact, that's who I'm thinking of, and I'm glad you said his name because I couldn't think of James Weber. But yeah, and there's a couple of other ones too. And but I'm surprised actually. He's one of the few who hasn't tried to get into the business. I don't think so. I mean,
he just loves being a fan. He appreciates it, and you know what? I talked to him about it, and like the indie wrestling and stuff. It's way more intimate. Yeah. You go to a WWE show, there's 20,000 people there. They're not going to stop and talk to you.
And the thing is, the fans don't go to the small shows, and I'm just as guilty. I didn't know there was independent wrestling. I didn't know.
I didn't know either.
If you consider Wildman independent, I guess we did, but I didn't know there was other things. Mm-hmm. So when I just didn't know. So I mean, because once again, there's no internet. There's no, you went, there's an advertisement for Maple Leaf Gardens. You go there. If there was anything else, you go. Well, that wasn't. It's not really big enough. I don't know any of the names. So why would you go? But nowadays, well, I think at one time it was Sebastian Suave who, of Smash fame, told me that there was. He comes down to Cauliflower Alley. 42 promotions in Ontario.
Oh, I'm sure.
I can name a few.
He did, like at the time, and that was the number I think he gave me, something like that. That's amazing. Like back in the day, there was the Wild Man and
Tunney.
Yeah, Tunney. Yeah.
We would never go to Hawkesbury to go see a Quebec show.
No.
It's too far away. Or more than likely, we would never go to Windsor to see a Chic show or a whatever show. Yeah. So, and you're certainly not going to drive to Thunder Bay to see an AWA show.
No.
I mean, they didn't do very many of them, but there was some.
Yeah.
Where would you?
There's other promotions up there too, but.
Pardon?
How would you guys rank the promotions in Ontario back then? So Maple Leaf Wrestling, then you had George Cannon and the Wild Man. Those are the only 3 big promoters I know of the 80s, and even
George
further.
Cannon did not run very long. I mean,
he was off and on, and it was like, early 72, 75, and then he went to Montreal more, and then they came back, and they only had TV. They hardly ran any shows here for a while, so it was fleeting. Whereas, yes, Dave was right from the early 70s, right to.
I lived in Toronto, and I didn't have a car, so for me, there was one George Cannon show.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There was one. I was there.
Yeah.
That's it. I never saw another one, and I don't know of any. So he didn't run for a long time. His show wasn't on that long. Superstars or whatever it's called of wrestling, whatever it's called, didn't last very long. It's like NWF in Buffalo. Some of the greatest memories I have of it is that.
Yeah.
It didn't last long.
No, it was 5 years at the most.
I don't even think that, because he turned into IWS or something like that in the States. It turned into Ron Martinez, something like that. And but that IWS was not NWF. That was something special.
Did you go to shows at Scarborough Arena for the Wild Man?
I went to a couple, yeah. When Archie Goldie was there, I went there.
74, summer of 74.
Okay, and we had Stomper Power T-shirts.
Okay.
Oscar ripped them off our shirts. Ripped our shirts off us.
Okay.
It's not me, but my buddy. And then he whispered to me, and this is when I started to sort of doubt. Because then Mosca whispered to me, "Hey guys, you come into Aurora next week? We can do the same, or tomorrow night. You want to do the same thing?"
Really?
Okay, there's something to this. He wants me to come because he thought it was funny that we had stopped. He actually enjoyed that, and he thought that was cool. So I was going, okay, there's something fishy about this. I probably had, probably finished university at this point, but I still didn't know. There was just so much doubt in my mind because I just couldn't believe they could take so much punishment, and I just couldn't believe it. So it's all real to me.
Before we wrap it up here, as Wes chugs that foam, what are you drinking? Orange beer over there?
That's Samuel Adams Boston Lager.
Oh, I love it. Delicious.
Wow. Before we start wrapping things up, we've mentioned Ron Hutchinson. I know I bought Wes a copy of his book. We both read it. I'm sure you've read the book. So,
there's several pictures and comments about me in it.
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah.
Jesse, if you bring the book next time I see you, I'll autograph it for you.
Oh, Jim.
I'll get your photo. Give me one of those old school shirts.
8x10 photo of Jim with
I'll
the
fill it
stretch.
out, baby. I'll give you an 8x10. I have no problem
Listen,
with that. Lots of those left over.
did you ever referee in the NWWL naked or NLWW Naked Ladies of Wrestling?
I actually asked Ron about that, and he says, number one, you're not a lady, and number two, you're not naked.
Okay. Good one.
But yes, I did throw out a request, but he did not listen to me. But yeah, that was, he did a lot of things. Ron's a good guy, and he comes down to Cauliflower Alley. He's actually on the executive board, so he does the seminars there. He plans the seminars, so when you go there, you actually have an opportunity to take seminars about wrestling and stuff. So I've taken referee ones for famous referees from all over, and I've done we did a nice little reunion there because Kazarian from AEW is married to the lovely Tracy Brooks, who lived in Barrie for a while and trained under Ron Hutchinson. So at Cauliflower Alley, Kazarian and myself and Tracy Brooks reunited with Ron because he hadn't seen Tracy in close to 15, 20 years. And him and a few people, I don't know if you know the story, but without getting into super details, there was a bit of a rift with Ron because Ron was very old school. And if you wrestled for him, which was the AWF, Apocalypse Wrestling Federation in Toronto around the 2000 era, 1999, 2000, around there, that's 2000s when I joined it. A couple of the wrestlers left because he wouldn't let you wrestle for anybody else.
Yeah.
And there weren't many indies back then, but there were a couple. Neo in Niagara Falls and things. So Tracy was one of the ones that, and maybe another one, Gail Kim, you might have heard of her too. And they kind of left Ron because he wasn't letting them wrestle for other places. And the indie scene was starting to build. So the idea of having a territory of your own that you couldn't, it just wasn't feasible. And it was getting to a point where Ron may have been a little bit, I don't want to say out of touch, that's not fair, but certainly he left Tracy on bad terms probably. And seeing her and all the problems in the world just disappeared the minute he saw her and the minute she saw him. And it was very emotional for me. And I just stood with Kazarian going, I said, you don't know how magical this is because you have to know the history here. And it was a magical time. It was really nice. Put me over really big too, because Tracy Brooks in the middle of a seminar ran across to me. Jim, I haven't seen you in 20 years. Oh, sorry. She was interrupting the seminar with all these people, but it was like, automatically everybody looked at me. It was like, oh, this guy actually knows something about wrestling. Cool. So
Ron's a good guy. I always ask him weird questions. Like I remember I asked him like, when did wrestling boots? Wes, something fell. I said when did wrestling boots become legal? Like, because you watch some of the footage that AC has of the 50s. Some of these guys aren't wearing shoes, right? And so I asked him like, when did boots? He's like, well, they were kind of always a thing. Because now people aren't wearing boots anymore. Like Matt Riddle in WWE doesn't wear any boots. He wrestles barefoot and Speedball is.
If you want an opinion, I hate the barefoot wrestler. It's just a thing with me. I didn't like when Snuka wore. I liked when he wore boots. Just a thing. Right. But your fans do know who Ron Hutchinson is, right? I don't know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He was the trainer of Edge and Christian and
Trish Stratus.
Trish Stratus and me.
Yeah, and Jim. Jim Connelly.
Yeah. Joey Legend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe, I was speaking of the exhibition. I remember watching Ron Hutchinson shows at the exhibition. And I think that's the first time I ever talked to him and the only time I talked to him because somebody that wrestled said, see that tall guy over there? Go tell him that you want to be a wrestler. And I was like 12. Well, I was in like grade 6 or grade 7.
School, so, he was old school. So there was actually a weight limit and stuff. You had to be like 190 pounds. And you had to, where the other schools, the ones I go now, the one I went to, like you could be 160 pounds, and I'm managing a guy in Barrie, and I love him to death, and I've turned into a manager. My guy is 135 pounds.
He's 5'2".
He's 100 and what? You didn't say
Travis Moore is the greatest wrestler in the world today, baby. Listen.
Did you say 135?
Speed, skill, strength. He's the
Well, it's like
exhibition of skill and strength. He's the man of the hour, the tower of power. This week we saw. Woo! He's the best wrestler in the world, Travis Moore. I'm telling you, but he's 135 pounds.
It's just like Empire, Matthew Grant, another guy. He can talk, but he's 110 pounds.
Censored. You didn't say 135.
One of my favorite people in the world. He is one of my favorite people in wrestling, and you manage who you're given.
Yes.
Honestly, I actually was supposed to manage a guy who's 240, muscular and everything, whose name will be not mentioned. And I asked for Travis because I said he was just one of my favorite. He's one of the guys. I'm 67 years old. When I go in a dressing room, the wrestlers don't talk to me generally because I'm too old.
Yeah.
He always would come over and sit and chat with me for a while because he was an outsider too. He's the small guy, but he's a really good wrestler. And I don't know what to say. I mean, he's against everything I believe in as well. And Wes, we probably totally agree on everything you're saying. But this guy's spirit it transcends the weight problem. Okay. And I think, like I said, wrestling is a circus. And what I mean by that is you have something for everybody.
Yep.
And I don't want to see 6 people at 135 pounds. But when you see him in a match, and you know who Ben Ortmans is, I'm pretty sure, Wes.
Yep.
His match with Ben Ortmans, I'll put up with any Ben Ortmans match I've ever seen. And he gave it right back to him, and it was just one of those. He works up to people, like, you know what I mean. And as I say, I promote him, and it's totally legit. And I asked for people who care, if you're in the Barrie area, come watch us. And I honestly did ask to manage him because I think maybe I can, with my name, I can help him a little bit and put him over a little bit. And we had our first victory last show, so we're pretty excited about that. And against our arch nemesis Clay Wilson, so that was.
There you go. Yeah, there's another name.
Another guy I knew before he was wrestling. He was a fan. So I mean, guys. I stood in line at a show, one of the band shows in Ontario. Why can I not think of the name of the promotion? UWF. That was one of the ones, like Emmanuel Mello in Ontario kept good stats for a long time at the Ontario Indy wrestling site, and took all the pictures back in the 2000s, early 2000s. And on that site, they would argue to death. You could not go to UWF if you went to any other show. It was kind of a band show because he would bring in Ultimo Dragon. He would bring all these guys who were amazing, Larry Sweeney, and just unbelievable. I met Josh Alexander in the line.
Oh,
he was a fan. I heard him saying, "I'm starting to train for wrestling." This 160-pound guy chuckled about, and I finally whispered to him, and I said, "I'm a referee, right?" "No, I don't." "Well, gosh, gee, Phil, how are you?"
Yeah.
And he developed,
and now he's Impact World Champion.
Monster. And when I first refed him, he was a different name, and whose name escapes me right now. I'll think of it in a minute. Jay Phoenix. And he was a flyer. He was a light guy, 150 pounds, maybe 160 pounds. So he built himself up, but he always had it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't describe it. I can't put my finger on it. It.
Yep.
Ron
It's
Hudson.
a famous saying. He's got it.
There was a wrestler called Silk. He quit. He had it.
Did he?
Can't explain it. He had it. And it's just that it factor. You can't explain it. Hey, everybody can do the moves.
Yes.
AWA, Brad Ringens. One of the greatest technical wrestlers I've ever seen, and had the personality of a sponge.
Boring as hell.
I couldn't, every cliche about wet paint drying applied to Brad Ringens. I could not watch him for 5 minutes, but I appreciated his skill, but I still didn't like to watch him. I would watch, if you asked, my son to this day will not forgive me for making him any kind of Tex McKenzie match. I will make him watch. Like 3 minutes long. I've got one from the NWF, kind of. It was that IW, whatever it was, that Martinez took to the States. and it's 2 minutes long, and he does the bulldog, but he does his high knee lifts. He was like, what, 6'7" or something like that, and thin as a pole. This match against the Sheik was the worst match I've ever seen in my life, but I loved him, and he did 3 moves, and I loved him. Don't ask me why. He had the it factor, and he'd have his arm around the announcer, and hey there, boy, and had that southern, that accent, and you can't explain who you like. Dusty Rhodes was a 300-pound out of shape, seemingly out of shape. He wasn't out of shape, but why would you like that guy? He's not fit. He's not anything. He had the it factor. He just had it.
Massive charisma.
And that's why I put over Josh Alexander so much. And the reason I'm retiring is that I screwed up one of his matches so badly that I'm so ashamed that I was so bad in that match that and he's such one of my favorite people and one of my favorite wrestlers that I can't do it anymore. Like it's not fair to the wrestlers for me to be in there. So
I saw him for the first time either in Kitchener or in Guelph. And I remember saying to Tim, wow, this guy's like, he is dynamic. Dynamic, that's a good word. And so then 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 times later, he's even gotten better. And Tim was even impressed.
Yeah. That Tim doesn't impress with anything.
No, not much. Very little. He liked you though.
Oh, well, that's good. He never told me that because
he never said it, but I could tell.
We'll chat one time about Tim. We'll do a private message to me, and I'll tell you how I feel about him. But to know a famous wrestler from back in the day, an enhancement worker, you know what I think about enhancement workers? I just love them to death.
Yes.
And Tim and I, it's interesting. We'll chat to him. He just said a few things online that were not pleasant.
I think he gets a little emotional.
Yeah. He didn't like me. He doesn't like anything that I did, like sell merch or anything like that. He was very old school. Yes. So I appreciate that.
And he came into the business a total kayfabe.
Yeah.
1,000,000%.
Yep.
And I give it to him. And we sat and had many dinners. And
I thought you were going to say beers.
No. So we went to Hamilton once. So we go down there, and someone was maybe it was Davin's promotion.
Okay.
I
can't work for him.
Wrestling of Ontario.
That's the only person I can't work for because of political problems. But he's asked for years. But
so
keep talking. I'm going to leave for a moment.
Okay.
Because I'm old and I've had 2 beers.
Oh God.
Keep talking. I can hear you.
So oh Jesus, Jim. Anyways, Tim barfed in my car. Anyways,
he barfed in your car.
Yeah.
I think Tim is on my Facebook. He just recently added me, actually.
Okay. No, he's a great guy. He's definitely old school. He came in the mid 70s, and it was closed, completely closed, right?
Yeah. Well, it's still kind of closed. People still treat it like it's closed, even though the cat's out of the bag.
Cat's massively out of the bag. We should think about this and say thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm back. I had to powder my nose. I could tell it was really shiny.
Your nose.
Sorry.
Oh, look, it's a wrestling magazine.
Oh, wow. The Ring magazine. I like those ones.
Yeah, 1947.
Yeah.
I like the yellow covers. I always call them the yellow covers.
Yeah, those are great.
I changed it. The Ring wrestling magazines are deaf.
The Ring was like a boxing magazine that had wrestling in it a lot of times.
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, because there was a guy in Barrie who had a collectible store. I got some really good stuff. Like he was, selling like the old posters, the Wild Man posters, like for $2 because he didn't know.
Oh, nice.
I got a Johnny Carson movie card, which I was so excited about because he did one movie. It was like he sold that to me for $2 because he just didn't know, and I was like, okay, that's great, thank you, I'll take that.
Thanks very much.
Wish I'd have bought a lot more now, but
Jesse, I want to just quickly, sorry Jim, but I just want to quickly name the winners again for the contest, the April subscribers contest. we haven't heard from anybody, so I'm going to give them a name. And Johnny, our producer, is going to put the names up at the end. And again, the
Johnny
number
G.
one, pardon me?
No, I just said Johnny G.
Yeah, Johnny G. He's our executive producer. John is number one winner. Number two is David Valenta. And number three is Marty Goldstein out of Winnipeg. These three people, pardon me, you know him?
I know that name. I don't know him, but I know the name. Yeah, that's a name from back in the day.
Back in the day, yes. And he's still promoting and working shows.
Yeah, good for him.
Great guy. So those are our three winners. If they can get in contact with us somehow, please and thank you. We'll send the prizes out to you. But if you don't contact us, we won't send you the prize because John.
That's great.
John is just John. We don't have any other information. I can't find him on any of our pages or anything. So
if it's Johnny G and he's just like kayfabing right now as John to get some shit.
Hey, John, if he's our executive producer and he's already tried.
He can't win, bro.
He's not getting anything. That's like me sending you more stuff, Jesse.
Hey, buddy, you can send boxes upon boxes. Our friend Dave Mollard has a box.
You're gonna get it anyways, buddy.
Buddy, the last box was full of stuff. I loved it.
So we're going to you're going to Quebec this weekend?
Yes, I got we're going 4 shows in 3 days.
Wow, nice.
And it's going to be my first cross province trip, and my first real guys trip where
so
no
Jim,
ladies.
A few weeks ago, our Johnny and Jesse were talking about going to Quebec, and I said, I texted them, did you get your interprovincial visas yet?
Because of COVID.
And they said what? And I said, oh yeah, you got to apply 6 months in advance, or you won't be able to cross the border. And I had them both hooked, like hook, line, and sinker.
Because we're like thinking COVID and like all the BS in Ottawa, and it's just like, bro, like what? Or like now we got to get passports across the province.
That's awesome. I've always wanted.
The best part is that he left it there all day, and then at like 6 o'clock our time, he's like, "Hey guys, I'm just joking." And John's like, "Dude, I couldn't find anything on it."
I've always wanted to go to Quebec to see shows because I mean, as you know, at Greektown, they brought in a lot of the French guys, and I loved working with them. They're
love it.
The old Frankie the Mobster, who's now Frankie the Monster, whatever he is now. He's just
Beast King.
He is so huge.
He's
he's like one of those skinny guys, and he's just huge now.
Okay. And
he's just as crazy out of the ring as he is in, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But he's a wonderful guy. I like him a lot, and So, but I've always wanted to go. I wanted to see the women's show there, but I can't think of the name of it. But I've always wanted to go see that, and that's it. There was no interesting story. I just wanted to see
Jim,
it.
Thank you very much for coming on today and having some beers with
us. Cheers.
That was fun. I treasure the relationship that we have, and it was always my pleasure coming and seeing you reffing. It was so cool to be in a room with 100 other people and seeing hey, that's my pal, that's my
it was. I always wanted to go have dinner with you guys and stuff, but I think Tim understood that you get to the, don't ask me why, I'll tell you another little secret. We have to be at the show 3 hours early.
Yeah.
Don't ever ask me why. I have no idea. I make so little money.
Yes.
If I was paid by the hour, I'd be making $3 an hour because you're there 3 hours early. It takes me 3 hours, 2 hours to get there. So you add all the time up, I don't know if people know that. They think you just show up to the show and you leave, but it's like teaching. Everybody thinks I get there at 9 and leave at 3:30.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
You live across the street, you just walk over and you just start teaching the kids.
Yep, that's it. You walk in and that's it. But we won't get into teaching.
We got our own George the Animal Steele here.
Yeah.
Wasn't he a teacher?
Yep. He used to teach high school and he would wrestle on the off season.
Yeah, that's right.
Off the summer. But there's a lot of teachers in wrestling. I won't name them because I don't know if they would like me to name them or not, but there's a bunch of teachers. I know
Danny Davis, I think.
I know a female detective who wrestles in Ontario. I know a female mechanic who wrestles in Ontario. I know a female police officer who wrestles in Ontario. But they may not want that.
And if Jim knows any single females, single dad alert. What up, girl?
They're really good looking though, Jesse.
Well, listen, you know what I call my gimmick, right? Is the blonde beauty of the six. Boom.
There we go. I don't know what that means. I don't know.
I don't either. I got the boom. That was about it.
That's it. Yes.
It was a bomb.
Well, Jim, again, man, thanks for coming out. It was good to talk, and even for me to hear stories oh yeah, about Ilya Zerlanga, because for me it's
I got him in there, baby.
That name for
team.
me, I hear that name all the time. I talked to Jimmy Corderas at the referee seminar. I was showing him my binders, and as soon as I got to the stranglehold, oh, do you know who Ilya Zerlanga is? I was like, yeah, didn't he make these? Isn't he the mastermind behind these amazing things that I am chasing down across the fucking eBay world?
I'm gonna PM you later, Wes. That's all I'm gonna say. But, yeah.
Wes.
Yeah. Seriously?
Are you all right, buddy? Or
it hasn't stopped raining since it stopped snowing here. So what can I say?
There you go.
Well, it's about 85 degrees here today.
Yeah, I heard it was 30 in Cambridge.
Yeah,
Yep.
I could have just wore briefs outside today. It was beautiful.
I'm just wearing briefs now.
I knew it. I knew I should have did it, dude.
I saw that little cutout at the back, Jim.
Yeah, I know. Sexy senior citizen, baby. Boom.
At least you're fit.
Oh.
At least you're fit.
That's right.
But you don't have a tan, Jim, and yeah.
Okay, first of all, you got that tan from the driving your packages all day with the hand out the window.
That's my farmer tan.
That's right.
Speaking of packages, but we won't go there.
That's for a whole other episode.
Yeah, sexy senior citizen.
Thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate you taking some time for us, and we'll maybe do the Schwab Wars again. That would be awesome.
I would love to talk to you guys again. It's always a pleasure. We just chat about early wrestling, which I love. People don't know that. I love early wrestling. It's great.
And if you have any modern wrestling, send it to Wes because I'm trying to get him on board.
But I'm, watch. You'll have to help me on this one, Jesse. The tag team in AEW. FTR.
Oh, FTR. Yeah, FTR.
They're old school, and they
live the old school, bro.
They know it, and they
Hang on a second. FCR.
No, FT.
FTR. They've talked about Jim Cornette managing them at certain points, but even Cornette likes them.
Oh, okay.
Cornette hates everything.
Yeah.
I think we're bitter.
Dude, you want to know how? Yeah.
But I listen to Cornette. That's all I listen to. And I sort of tell it that I don't agree with everything he says, but I agree with all of he says.
Nor do I. But he expresses his opinion, and he's got a channel to do it, and good for him.
Yeah,
bro, they're so old school that when the man charged the ring and tackled Bret Hart, these guys carried him out, and the guy went boom. And just decked him good. And sorry, you tackled my favorite wrestler. I'm gonna kick the shit out of you.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's a rule. If somebody jumps in the ring, you're fair game. You're fair game. If you jump in the ring, I'm gonna hit you.
Yep. Well, yeah.
Not that it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
I've already hurt my hand. Yeah, it's just an instinct. You would just do it. As I said, the best one I ever saw was Billy Robinson versus the Sheik. Fan jumped in, and both of them looked at him. That 1 second pause, and both of them laid into him. So here's two guys against each other who hate each other, and they both united against the fan who jumped in the ring. How dare you interrupt our show? You wouldn't jump in. I was going to say O'Keefe Center. What's it called now? I don't know. But the play is going on. You don't jump in.
No, that's right. You missed the line. How dost thou, not how do thou.
Yeah.
Shakespeare.
Yeah. So
don't get me started about Shakespeare. I'm going to do a podcast about Shakespeare because I love Shakespeare.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
You're the one.
You are old as hell, bro. Holy. Here's Shakespeare in a nutshell. A bunch of long-ass words. A bunch of long-ass words. A crazy-ass sentence mixed with a crazy-ass sentence and a sad part.
And someone dies.
Yeah. Oh my God, my girlfriend's dead.
Yeah, Jesse, you're right on top of it. Mr. Culture.
Yes.
That could be your new.
We are so cultured, Jim.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up, kids. Again, thank you so much, Jesse. Guess what? You're gonna give us a report about Quebec, and we've got
we're gonna film the whole trip.
Got a podcast coming out tonight, is it?
New episode drops tomorrow. It is May 30th, so June 1st will be our St. Louis episode.
This episode,
St. Louis, 1971 Harley race. Pat O'Connor, Baron Von Rosch, and Jack Briscoe.
Yep, it's going to be a good one, and we're excited to be giving all the fans that and more.
And more.
Look at the shape. I love it.
That's right. And then after that, we're going to after the St. Louis. It is
1959.
Yeah, 1959 Toronto.
Yep.
How old were you then, Jesse?
Oh, I don't. I think my dad was 1.
I was 5. Go ahead.
I was. It's like about. I think the card we're doing is 6 weeks after I was born.
Yeah.
So
it's the farthest point in history that we've gone.
Furthest back we've gone, yes. So we're very excited about that one too, and we're going to be switching back and forth. We got a couple more great things coming down the pike, plus this one. So
this one, we got an Ask Us Anything episode, and we got like 16, 17 questions that people have just sent us. Davin has sent a specific question for Wes, who mandatory an answer from you.
I'll be listening to that one.
I love that. I've seen a couple of the questions, and you know what? I've done some research, and I was just flipping through some magazines, and I found an answer to one of the questions. I was like, "Oh my god, that's awesome!" I got perfect. So
yeah, lots of stuff coming.
And if I don't know, I'll just lie.
And a possible sponsorship with Greektown is coming.
Okay, cool. We're working with Greektown, and that would be awesome to have another sponsored show.
That'll be huge for us, especially with the Wrestling History and Ted Reeve Arena. We both have clippings of that, and there's so much more historical content.
Bret Hart?
Yeah, Bret the Hitman Hart's there. Don't try to make me cry because he's not going to talk to anybody. Decker's already told me.
Yeah.
I've already tried.
Yeah.
I'm like, please just let me ask him one thing. But I don't blame him.
No.
But lots of content coming from us. And hopefully maybe Jim will come back out and we'll have to talk more stories and more old school wrestling.
Yep.
But until then, I'm Jess.
I'm Wes.
And we are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. And again, thank you, Jim, for coming out, buddy.
Always a pleasure.
Until next time.
Ciao.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
We are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. It's the NWCA podcast.